One of the boys reflects that the world is broadly divided into two types of people. He notes that he will not argue about which type is happier, because that perspective likely varies for everyone. He states with absolute certainty that if someone wants to bask in the glory of youth and become popular, the only path they can choose is to be an extrovert. The boy swings his arm back, tossing something out of view. As he adjusts his tie in front of the mirror, his phone receives a notification. He checks his phone and sees messages from a friend begging to copy his math homework once they get to school. The friend follows up by demanding a caramel macchiato and a matcha frap. But after he protests that those are too expensive, the friend settles for a milk coffee to call it even. In the group chat, one person points out that Surejer's profile icon is super cringe, and when asked for his opinion, the boy agrees that it is not pleasant to look at. Surejer texts the group to hang on a second. Surejer changes his profile icon to a blurry close-up picture of something dark and round. A friend asks what the dark picture is, and Surejer replies that it is his nipple, leaving the boy staring at his phone in disbelief. The group tells Surejer to go become a monk, but he defends himself by saying he took the picture on the train and did his best. In response, the boy threatens to grab Surejer by the throat for the stunt. While walking to school, he spots two female classmates chatting near a crosswalk. He rides up on his bicycle and greets them. One of the girls notes that he recognized them right away, which he brushes off by pointing out that they have been classmates for 2 weeks. One of the girls remarks that biking to school looks refreshing. He agrees that it is nice right now, but complains about the 30-minute commute he will have to endure during the summer and winter months. As he rustles through his bag, one of the girls mentions that the mini honey buns he recommended the other day were sold out. He pulls 2 packaged honey buns out of his bag and shows them to her, prompting her to ask why he just carries them around. She suspiciously asks if he is the one buying all the stock, but he denies it, explaining he just bought them to eat on the way since he missed breakfast. Deciding to, since it is a special occasion, he tosses a honey bun to each of them and waves goodbye. He tells them he will see them in class and rides away, privately wondering if he was trying a little too hard just then. He pushes his bicycle up the path towards the school building. Arriving at the shoe lockers inside, he greets a classmate wearing glasses who quietly returns the good morning. The classmate asks if the answer to the last math homework problem is 3, complaining about how confusing sets and logic are. He stammers in agreement, admitting he feels the same way. The boy states he is glad they are in the same class now and thanks the classmate for helping him the other day. The classmate stammers that he is glad too, then asks if the boy really means it. The classmate remarks that even though Yuta is an extrovert, he is easy to talk to, which Yuta laughs off and thanks him for. The 2 boys stand together outside their classroom, forming a pair of an extrovert and an introvert. As they enter the classroom, several classmates pause to stare at them. Yuta reflects that curious stares are being sent their way, likely because of the dissonance of their pairing, and notes that he experienced this atmosphere a few times, even in middle school. He clarifies that back then he experienced it from the complete opposite position. He is, in now, meaning he used to be an introvert. Thinking back to middle school, Yuta remembers being happy in his own way, content with a world of light novels, anime, and games. He barely spoke to anyone and pretended not to care when the extroverts made fun of him and called him a low-level guy they did not want to associate with. Because he was full of himself, he alienated other students with similar hobbies and ended up with no friends at all. He admits he was the most troublesome kind of introvert, a kid with nothing but pointless pride. Despite his pride, he secretly longed for love as he watched a quiet girl in his class. He introduces her under the pseudonym Natoko, a classmate from his 3rd year of middle school. He describes her as a typical short, quiet introvert who often read by herself during breaks and stayed up late fighting in game monsters, making her the perfect introverted girl. He confesses he had feelings for Natoko, believing he could feel a connection every time their eyes met, even though they almost never spoke. He convinced himself they had the same vibe, and that only he understood her true worth until he was proven wrong. It was a total shock when he saw Nitoko on a date with an extrovert from their class. To make matters worse, the guy was a player type. He especially hated someone who would always flash him a wicked, condescending smile. Seeing Nitoko completely shifted into girl mode while standing next to the extrovert shattered his illusion of them having the same vibe. He reflects that the situation just reeked of something incredibly sour, which he equates to the smell of stomach acid. After holing up in his room for about 3 days, 2 changes occurred within him. He notes that one change was an awakening to NTR, which he dismisses as unimportant, while the other was a firm determination to break free from being an introvert. With tears in his eyes, he resolved to become an extrovert, so he could soft-serve ice cream with someone in the food court. To achieve his goal, he started going outside during the day to train himself to make eye contact with people. He actively talked with clothing store staff, and sometimes even recorded their conversations to fine-tune his way of speaking. Focusing heavily on his hairstyle, he bravely asked the barber for a 2-block cut, a style he was previously too afraid to even mention. He recalls gaining the necessary knowledge by memorizing the faces and names of famous actors and streamers, noting that memorizing English vocabulary would have been several times easier, and that he felt like his brain was going to melt. He declares that his grueling effort was worth it because it transformed him into Kyoto Yuta the extrovert, and pride of Class 1B at Wadea High School. A blonde girl cheerfully greets Kyoto and complains that the morning was seriously the worst, to which he readily agrees. Tsureja complains off-screen that the others hate his nipples way too much. Tsureja passionately defends himself by proclaiming that his nipples were born to be loved. Kyoto and the blonde girl stare at him in tired silence. Kyoto notes that the girl sitting next to him, Kara Ayami, is a natural extrovert and a cheerful, innocent Gyaru who gets along with anyone. He adds that Tsureja Ogasawara is also an extrovert through possessing a straightforward and stupidly cheerful personality, though Kyoto admits he thinks Tsureja is just plain stupid. Kara confirms with Kyoto that they are hanging out for lunch break today, and he enthusiastically agrees, claiming that is the whole reason they come to school. Kara suggests they eat lunch during the 3rd period break, which Kyoto immediately agrees to, right as a clattering sound comes from a dark-haired girl seated nearby. The teacher walks to the front of the classroom and announces the start of homeroom. As Kyoto pushes in his chair, a small piece of cloth flutters through the air. The cloth lands softly on the floor. He bends down to grab the cloth, then lifts it and hands it back to the dark-haired girl. The girl blushes deeply and stammers a nervous laugh as she takes the cloth from him. She intensely stares at him while thanking him very much, making Kyoto slightly flustered as he tells her it is no problem. She quickly turns away, leading Kyoto to observe her bob cut and black-rimmed glasses, while noting that she is obviously an introvert. Realizing she is searching for something as well, Kyoto decides that, as a former introvert himself, he wants to support her so she can have a happy school life. His thoughts are interrupted when he notices something poking out of the back of her head. He spots Yu Nanakusa walking ahead of him in the hallway during break and wonders why she inexplicably has a piece of dried salmon jerky caught in her hair. Changing the subject, he explains that he met 3 gods when he decided to become an extrovert, the first being the clerk at the contact lens store, who watched him struggle to put in his lenses. He struggles with his contacts and apologizes to the clerk, suggesting that maybe it is just impossible for him. The clerk asks if he wants to change and questions if it is okay to give up now. He notes that those powerful words gave him the courage to face his contacts again. He introduces the second god as an old man at a game buyback shop. He explains that becoming an extrovert costs money, so he had no choice but to sell the many romance games that had taught him about love. The old man examines the games and remarks that they are in such pristine condition he can hardly believe they are used. He adds that they must have been loved by a very kind owner, leaving Kyoto surprised. Seeing Kyoto getting tearful, the old man warmly reassures him that the games will always be waiting for him. He introduces the third god as Nakabayashi, a classmate from his third year of middle school. He remembers a day when he was coldly brushing Nakabayashi off, prompting him to ask why Nakabayashi even bothered with him. Nakabayashi cheerfully replied that it was because talking with him is fun. Kyoto reflects that this exchange stuck with him for some reason. He explains that this is likely why on the day he decided to become an extrovert, Nakabayashi was the first person who came to mind as a role model. Having Nakabayashi as his ideal extrovert made Kyoto who he is today, and he admits it is fair to say he based his clothing, posture, and way of speaking largely on him. Concluding his long explanation, Kyoto states that the kind of person he aspires to be is a truly cool, true extrovert who treats everyone equally without discrimination. He realizes that this very ideal is about to be put to the test right now, as he watches Yuyu Nanakusa, the introvert girl in his class, walk by with a piece of dried salmon jerky caught in her hair while other girls whisper about her. Recognizing this as a chance for someone aiming to be a true extrovert to show their stuff, he calls out to Nanakusa, making her stop and turn around in confusion. With a confident smile and a wink, Kyoto plucks the item from her head, telling her it was stuck in her hair, and identifying it as salmon jerky, leaving her completely shocked. Kyoto casually takes a bite of the jerky, mentally noting that it is salty and hard, while Nanakusa hesitantly tries to speak. Still blushing and nervous, she stammers out a thank you, and Kyoto smoothly acknowledges her. He wonders internally why she even had it stuck on her in the first place, but decides to let it go. He reaches out toward her, telling her not to move because her hair is a mess, causing her to freeze in confusion and nervously laugh. As he places his hand on her head to fix her hair, she violently jolts and lets out a loud squeak of panic. Flustered by her intense reaction, Kyoto quickly pulls his hand back and apologizes. She awkwardly forces a smile and stammers out another thank you with a nervous laugh. Kyoto casually waves goodbye and tells her he will see her later as he walks away, leaving her standing quietly in the hallway. Tsureja pops his head in to ask Kyoto what he is eating, and Kyoto casually replies that he is eating salmon jerky. Kyoto keeps munching on the jerky and explains that he simply picked it up, which prompts Tsureja to ask where he could have possibly found such a thing. Kara looks disgusted and pleads with Kyoto not to eat random things he finds on the ground. Later, Nanakusa walks past Kyoto in the hallway and looks at him while he continues to chew on the jerky. Nanakusa happily repeats his name to herself with a warm smile. The next day, Kyoto is startled as he steps out of the restroom when Nanakusa suddenly calls his name from behind. When Kyoto nervously asks what is going on, Nanakusa steps closer to thank him for yesterday and hands him a wrapped gift. Surprised, Kyoto opens the bag and finds several heart-shaped treats inside. The sight of the heart shapes leaves Kyoto completely stunned and flustered. Kyoto quickly scolds himself for overreacting like a typical introvert, and eats one of the treats, convincing himself that a heart shape does not actually mean anything romantic. He thanks her and compliments the taste, feeling relieved that he avoided a classic misunderstanding, while she laughs happily in response. Kara and Kyoto are drawn to something Nanakusa is doing. Kara points out Nanakusa's phone, causing the quiet girl to look up in surprise. Kara points out that Nanakusa has the exact same phone case as Kyoto, calling it a crazy coincidence since they sit next to each other, which Nanakusa nervously agrees with. While Kara happily praises the matching cases, Kyoto silently wonders if Nanakusa was actually using a completely different phone case just the day before. After school, Kyoto heads to the bicycle racks and notices Nanakusa standing nearby. Kyoto wonders why she is there, but she immediately turns toward him with a bright, welcoming expression. Kyoto asks if she bikes to school, but she quickly shakes her head and claims she is just waiting to meet a friend. Kyoto accepts her explanation, and she softly confirms it. As Kyoto prepares to leave with his bicycle, Nanakusa continues to stand quietly and stare intently at him. Kyoto clears his throat and asks if she has any hobbies, which surprises her, but she begins following a short distance behind as he walks away. She hesitantly asks that she reads manga, And when he asks whether she prefers shonen or shoujo, she shyly admits she enjoys shoujo manga. Kyoto mentions a popular shoujo title that recently received a live-action drama adaptation about a heroine working at a bakery, which immediately excites Nanakusa, as she gasps that she read that one and loved the casting in the show. She continues to gush about how faithful the first episode was, and how perfect the main actor was, prompting Kyoto to point out how much she truly loves the series. Nanakusa shyly brings up that he had posted about the series on social media, which Kyoto slowly recalls doing. Kyoto silently realizes that the post she mentioned was from 2 weeks ago, indicating that she must actively check his social media accounts. Kyoto bids her farewell for the day, and she brightly wishes him a good evening in return. As Kyoto rides off, he reflects on the growing clues, feeling his suspicions about her are rapidly turning into a certainty. During lunch the next day, Kyoto passes a soccer ball to Tsureja while they call out to Kara. Kara confidently kicks the ball straight back toward Kyoto. Kyoto narrowly blocks the high-speed kick with his chest, remarking on the close call. Kyoto warns her not to use full volleys while she laughs and praises his clean stop. Kara notes how much better he has gotten compared to how clumsy he used to be, and when Tsureja asks if he has been practicing somewhere on his own, Kyoto nervously claims he has just been playing with them. Privately, Kyoto admits that he is lying and has actually been practicing diligently at home in his free time ever since he started hanging out with the 2 ex-soccer club members. While Kyoto reflects on the hidden effort required to keep up with his extroverted friends, Kara suddenly points out Nanakusa standing nearby. Nanakusa gasps and quickly ducks back behind a nearby tree when she realizes she has been spotted. Kara wonders aloud why Nanakusa was lingering there, questioning if she was just passing by or if there is another reason. Kyoto feels a sudden spike of anxiety as Kara teasingly suggests Nanakusa might have a crush on either him or Tsureja. Tsureja blankly asks who Nanakusa is, earning a quick scolding from Kyoto, who silently concludes that he has apparently become the girl's Prince Charming. Kyoto contemplates his situation, realizing that while he doesn't mind Nanakusa liking him, he hesitates because he probably likes Kara instead. His thoughts drift back a few weeks to the high school entrance ceremony when a voice suddenly called out to him from the crowd. Kyoto turned around in confusion to find Kara standing there looking directly at him. She pointed at his tie and told him that he would look much cooler if he actually fixed it. When he asked if she really thought so, she cheerfully insisted that he should adjust it properly. He adjusted his tie as instructed, prompting her to give him an enthusiastic thumbs up and declare that it looked super nice. She introduced herself as Kara Ayami, and he introduced himself in return as Kyoto Yuta. When he asked if her name indicated she was of mixed heritage, she explained that it was just a unique name, but it was her favorite, inviting him to call her Kara as well, which marked the very first time they ever spoke. Kyoto reflects on how she had gently shattered his foolish assumption that looking messy was cool, proving to be a straightforward person, unlike anyone he had ever met before. Suddenly, the sharp blow of a whistle echoes across the gym, signaling a transition. The physical education teacher calls out Tsureja for traveling with the basketball multiple times, causing him to groan in frustration. His classmates jokingly accuse him of committing fouls on purpose and playing a completely different sport, complaining that playing basketball with him is suffocating. Tsureja loudly protests against the rules of basketball, complaining about not being allowed to walk with the ball and demanding a rule change, while the teacher tells him that complaining to her will not help. Kara tells Tsureja he is being far too loud, and when he desperately begs her to join him in getting rid of the sport, she flatly refuses, so people do not mistake her for a dummy as well. Other classmates point out that Kara is actually quite skilled at basketball, unlike Tsureja, whom they tease by calling him a soccer gorilla, prompting an angry shout from him. While Kara and Tsureja continue to bicker in the foreground, Nanakusa sits quietly against the wall in the background, watching closely. Nanakusa hugs her knees and stares intently from across the gym with a slight blush. Kyoto notices her unwavering gaze and feels conflicted, reminding himself that he is supposed to be in love with Kara. He analyzes his feelings, noting that he likes Kara because she is cute and speaks her mind, though they have only known each other for a few weeks, whereas Nanakusa is a cute, well-endowed introvert who undeniably has genuine feelings for him. Kyoto sighs over his complicated dilemma, but his thoughts are interrupted when a classmate named Inamoto calls out to him. Inamoto strikes up a conversation with Kyoto, praising Kara for being incredibly considerate of everyone, despite her Gyaru appearance, which Kyoto casually agrees with. Inamoto wonders if Kara has a boyfriend, and when Kyoto mentions that she likely does not, Inamoto reacts with excitement. Inamoto asks Kyoto to put in a good word for him with Kara since he is serious about her, but Kyoto suddenly dashes away, telling Inamoto to do it himself. Kyoto runs over to the court to join Tsureja, calling for him to pass the basketball. Kyoto catches a pass from Tsureja and prepares to shoot, mentally thanking Inamoto for helping him realize something about himself. As Kyoto takes his shot, he reflects that hearing another guy show interest in Kara simply annoyed him, confirming his feelings. The basketball swooshes cleanly through the net. The other players cheer for Kyoto's impressive three-point shot. Inamoto teases Kyoto that his two-handed shot looked uncool, which Kyoto grumpily brushes off while Tsureja begs Kyoto to teach him how to play. Kyoto spots Nanakusa smiling warmly at him from the sidelines and mentally apologizes to her, realizing he cannot return her feelings. Kyoto turns his attention to Kara, who is waving at him with a giant cheerful smile. Kara gives him an enthusiastic thumbs up, cementing Kyoto's absolute certainty that he is in love with her. After school, Kyoto and Nanakusa walk together down the long, quiet hallway. Kyoto slowly leads the way, noting that she is silently following closely behind him. When Kyoto turns around and calls her name, she lets out a startled squeak before laughing nervously. Kyoto asks if she is on her way home, and when she hesitantly says no, he invites her to walk to the gate together, to which she eagerly agrees. Kyoto pushes his bicycle as the two of them walk side by side across the school grounds. Nanakusa repeatedly steals happy glances at Kyoto as they make their way forward together. She shyly pulls out a copy of her favorite manga series, Pan Koi, and offers to let him borrow it. Kyoto asks if she is lending the book to him, and when she shyly explains she brought it because he had expressed interest in the drama, he cheerfully promises to give it a read. Nanakusa giggles happily and asks Kyoto who his favorite character in Pan Koi is, catching him slightly off guard. Nanakusa reveals her favorite character is likely Aojikawa-kun, who is the male lead of the series, and is known as an outgoing, popular honor student who always watches out for the shy main heroine. She explains how much she admires how he reaches out to isolated people and is kind to everyone, leading Kyoto to conclude that she is attracted to that type of guy. Blushing, she agrees and asks Kyoto which of the female characters in the story he likes. Kyoto replies that he likes Ririne, which leaves Nanakusa completely shocked and speechless. Kyoto observes that the story features several unique female characters and notes that Nanakusa likely relates herself to Suz, the shy and quiet main heroine. He reflects that Ririne, Suz's flashy and energetic friend, is the exact opposite of Nanakusa due to her unique changing style and extroverted nature. Kyoto explains that he has always been drawn to Gyaris because of their stylish appearance and relaxed personalities, prompting a quiet, downcast response from Nanakusa. Kyoto bids her a quick goodbye for the night and walks away, leaving her standing there as she hesitantly tries to call out after him. Nanakusa stands alone on the street as she watches Kyoto ride off into the distance on his bicycle. Kyoto pedals hard, panting as he races down the street on his way home. No matter how hard and fast he pedals, his thoughts remain heavy and unyielding. He struggles to forget the hurt look on Nanakusa's face, feeling a heavy and unexpectedly bitter weight of guilt over having rejected her. Kyoto fiercely tells himself that he has no regrets, because Kara is the one he truly loves, bringing his dynamic with Nanakusa to a definitive, painful end. The next morning, Kyoto hears a strange commotion and chatter echoing down the school hallway as he approaches his classroom. Kayota stops by the door wondering what all the noise is about. He looks inside the classroom to find a group of students gathered around a desk where a girl is sitting. Kayota looks closer in disbelief, realizing the girl sitting at the desk is Nanakusa. She suddenly turns her head around to face him, leaving him completely stunned. Nanakusa, who has completely transformed her appearance with a short styled haircut, hair clips, and no glasses, brightly wishes Kayota a good morning as his heart begins to race. Kayota can only stare back at her in absolute shock and silence. Kayota greets Nanakusa and asks about her hair, to which she shyly explains that she decided to get a makeover. When she nervously asks if her new hair looks good, Kayota can barely hold back a laugh. Kayota bursts out laughing, making her worry that it looks bad, but he reassures her that it actually suits her surprisingly well. He tries to regain his composure, but quickly begins to chuckle once more. Kayota breaks out into loud, unstoppable laughter. Kayota silently wonders why she chose such a drastic makeover with pink hair, noting that picking pink right away is actually a very typical introverted choice. He tells her the change is hilarious and calls her more unhinged than he expected, teasingly asking if she is trying to speak like a Gyaru, which she protests is mean. Kayota asks where her glasses went, and she explains that she finally switched to contact lenses. She confesses that she actually bought the contacts during spring break, but lacked the confidence to wear them until today. Kayota warmly praises her for working so hard to make the change. Nanakusa blushes and beams with a happy, relieved smile. Kara suddenly rushes over to ask what happened. And as Kayota explains the makeover, Nanakusa shyly confirms it while classmates call out compliments. Kara gushes about how cute the pink hair is, and asks how she got such a pretty color so quickly. And Nanakusa explains that it took a long time and involved many salon treatments. Kara leans in to sniff her hair and remarks that she strongly smells of the salon, while Tsureja casually enters the classroom. Tsureja stops in surprise to ask who the new girl is, prompting Kara to loudly introduce her as Nanakusa, while the others praise the wild hairstyle, as cool Tsureja questions their taste and disagrees. Kayota reflects that while her transformation is not particularly extrovert, she still managed to change her own world through her own strength on that day. He reflects further on Nanakusa's feelings for him. He realizes that her feelings for him are definitely not over yet. A new story begins as a stubborn-looking girl stands with her arms crossed. In the schoolyard, Kara stands with her foot on a soccer ball as Nanakusa watches from a short distance away. Kara cheerfully calls out to her by a nickname as she gets ready to pass the ball, and Nanakusa excitedly tells her to bring it on. Kara confidently kicks the soccer ball straight toward her. As the ball flies closer, Nanakusa begins to fluster and panic. Despite her panic, Nanakusa successfully stops and traps the ball with her foot. Kara and Kayota immediately cheer for her successful trap. Tsureja bursts into loud laughter and jokingly questions her awkward trapping technique. Tsureja continues to laugh and teases her by saying she looked like a dancing pink raccoon, causing Nanakusa to pout in embarrassment. Suddenly, the ball flies forward and hits Tsureja directly in the crotch, leaving him in absolute agony. As Tsureja groans face down on the ground, Kara jokingly encourages her to do that anytime, while Kayota adds she can kick him directly next time, which the groaning boy protests is not okay. Later, Nanakusa quietly approaches Kayota and calls his name, prompting him to ask what is on her mind. She shyly points to her face and asks if she did a good job, leaving Kayota completely confused as he asks what she is referring to. Nanakusa happily smiles at him while he continues to wonder what she means. Kayota asks what she is talking about as she giggles, while Tsureja remains collapsed on his knees in the background with Kara looking over him. Kayota reflects on how he was suddenly thrown into a popular group and felt confused, but reasons that if he was able to change, then Nanakusa can definitely do the same. Kayota suddenly pauses and looks over, noticing something nearby. He spots the stubborn-looking girl from before hiding behind a tree, only for her to quickly slip away. Kayota stares in that direction and realizes who she is, though his thoughts are cut short when Kara shouts at him to stop zoning out, which he quickly brushes off. During break time after the first period, Nanakusa looks down at a booklet in tears, calling out for Utamin. Kyoto introduces Mizuno Utami, a highly intelligent student who boasts the top grades in the class, as she turns around to question him. During a previous study session, Nanakusa shyly mentions that she could not solve the last math question, only for Utami to bluntly reply that the problem was easy, causing Nanakusa to apologize. Utami mockingly questions if her brain turned pink along with her dyed hair, casting Nanakusa into a deep state of gloom. Utami sighs in deep irritation, while Nanakusa continues to look distressed behind her. Utami reluctantly agrees to help her since she has no choice, making Nanakusa instantly sparkle with gratitude. Seeing this, other female classmates approach Utami's desk to ask if she could help them with their homework as well. Utami responds with a cold, silent stare that leaves Nanakusa and the other girls sweating nervously. One classmate nervously suggests that just getting the answers would be fine, but Utami only glares at them even more intensely. Utami remains completely silent, prompting the intimidated girls to apologize and quickly retreat. When Nanakusa asks if her math problem is correct, Utami points out a mistake in her last calculation, to which Nanakusa casually replies in her new slang. Utami bluntly questions her new Gyaru way of speaking and wonders why she looks so happy, which only makes Nanakusa giggle more. As Kyoto turns around to observe them studying, Utami shoots a sharp glare back in his direction. Kyoto notes that her glare is even sharper than usual, realizing it is likely due to her seeing their soccer game during lunch. He recalls that the small figure secretly peeking at their soccer game earlier was indeed Mizuno Utami. The next day during lunch, Kyoto brings up Utami to Nanakusa, who asks in surprise if he wants to talk about her. Nanakusa pouts jealously and asks if he wants to get closer with Utami, making Kyoto wonder why she is making such a face. Kyoto explains that he simply wants to learn more about her since she is Nanakusa's friend, which immediately relieves and brightens her mood. Nanakusa giggles in relief and mentions that Utami is very good at studying, though Kyoto notes that he is already well aware of that. She adds that Utami eats pickled plums quite often, a minor detail that Kyoto silently admits he does not particularly care about. When Nanakusa mentions that Utami is also small and cute, Kyoto silently sighs that anyone can easily tell that just by looking at her. Nanakusa leans in closer with a dark expression to ask if he really thinks Utami is cute, causing Kyoto to sweat nervously, as he wonders if this is a jealousy trap, and quickly clarifies that he only overheard other classmates saying so. Kyoto changes the subject by asking what she usually talks about with Utami, and Nanakusa explains that they talk a lot about manga and anime, despite having slightly different tastes. Nanakusa notes that while she prefers shoujo manga and romance, Utami likes action and isekai series, while Utami unexpectedly sneezes as she walks down the hallway. She beams and adds that Utami talks incredibly fast whenever anime and manga come up, prompting Kyoto to silently observe that she does the exact same thing. Nanakusa warns him that a strange switch sometimes flips in Utami regarding her favorite series, explaining that one has to carefully navigate conversations like picking dialogue options in a dating sim. While Kyoto privately reflects on how obsessive hobbies work while ignoring his own past as an otaku, he directly asks Nanakusa if she and Utami are actually friends. Nanakusa eagerly claims they are friends before immediately faltering and saying she only thinks so, making Kyoto note that her confidence is rapidly fading. She quietly confesses her hope that they are friends, but worries Utami might actually hate her because she gets angry with her so frequently. Kyoto asks if she genuinely wants to be close friends with Utami, and Nanakusa warmly confirms it, adding that Utami is actually a very kind person. When Kyoto questions how Utami can be considered kind when she is constantly angry with her, Nanakusa hesitantly maintains that she probably is. Kyoto reflects that he only asked these questions because he was concerned about Utami spying on them, but finds himself more confused than ever aside from realizing that Nanakusa holds a deep respect for Utami. Kara cheerfully runs into the room with school store bags and apologizes for the delay, while a starving Tsureja loudly complains about his hunger. Kyoto quietly tells Nanakusa that they will finish their discussion another time, and she softly agrees. After school, the group plays soccer in the yard before agreeing to head to a family restaurant together to work on their homework. Since Kyoto is the only one who commutes by bicycle, he waves goodbye as the others board a bus to head over first. As Kyoto prepares to ride away, he suddenly remembers that he likely left his homework on his desk and decides to return to the school building to retrieve it. Kyoto walks through the quiet, empty school corridor back to their classroom. Peering inside, Kyoto is surprised to find Utami still sitting at her desk and intently using her phone. Kyoto quietly whispers her name as she remains focused on her screen, looking somewhat flustered. Kyoto watches over her shoulder to see her typing on an online shopping page for pink hair dye, realizing that she is contemplating purchasing the exact same color Nanakusa used. Utami nervously mutters to herself that she is going to buy the hair dye. Kyoto suddenly asks from behind her if she is planning to dye her hair too, causing her to jump and shriek in absolute shock. She stammers in anger and points a finger to ask what his problem is, while he calmly retorts that she should have noticed him standing there. She hurls her notebook at him while yelling at him to shut up, calling him a popular kid, while he apologizes and begs her not to throw things. Kyoto raises his hands in surrender, claiming he did not see anything and asking if she is satisfied now, which only flusters her further. Kyoto jokingly details exactly what he saw about her hesitating to dye her hair to match Yuyu, prompting her to hit him with another book, while loudly denying the accusation. Kyoto asks why she was thinking of dyeing her hair in the first place, and she sits back down at her desk, pouting in embarrassed silence. She quietly responds that there is no particular reason, and that she only wanted a change of pace. Kyoto hums in deep thought, prompting her to glare at him and ask what he is thinking. Kyoto realizes that to Utami, Nanakusa is much more than just a casual acquaintance she hangs out with out of habit. He reasons that if she did not care, she would not have watched their soccer game with such lonely eyes, or considered dyeing her hair a flashy color because of Nanakusa. He understands that since Nanakusa started hanging out with his popular group, Utami has effectively lost the only close friend she had. Kyoto grumpily calls out her name, and she grumpily asks what he wants from her now. Kyoto invites her to have lunch with him and Nanakusa, sometime catching her completely off guard. When she demands to know why she should join them, Kyoto mentally warns himself not to mess up his response. Kyoto explains that Nanakusa still seems a bit uncomfortable around his popular friends and is not fully used to hanging out with them yet. He points out that since she is close with Nanakusa, having her there would help Nanakusa relax, which Utami quietly admits makes sense. Kyoto adds that Nanakusa was happily talking about her earlier that day, noticing her expression soften as he prepares to make one final push. He tells her that Nanakusa was complimenting her and calling her kind, which causes Utami to jolt in surprise and blush. Utami quietly calls him a liar, and when he acts confused, she buries her face and insists there is no way Nanakusa would ever say something like that about her. Kyoto insists that Nanakusa really did say those kind words about her, but Utami immediately yells back that there is absolutely no way. She explains that she is always saying mean things to Nanakusa, meaning she could never be considered kind, and repeatedly calls Kyoto a liar. When Kyoto tries to explain Nanakusa's perspective, Utami flatly cuts him off and tells him not to invite her to anything. She claims that she already eats lunch with other friends anyway, but when Kyoto points out that she is never seen around during lunch break, she flusteringly lies that she eats with students from other classes. Utami decides she has had enough and packs her bag to go home, but Kyoto calls out for her to wait. Kyoto tells her to just listen and grabs her arm to stop her, but as she struggles to pull away, her foot suddenly wobbles on the floor. Utami screams as she loses her balance, prompting Kyoto to yell a warning and dash forward to catch her. Kyoto catches her firmly in his arms before she can hit the ground, leaving her looking up at him in stunned silence. The two stare at each other at close range, both becoming incredibly flustered by the sudden proximity. Overcome with embarrassment, she shrieks and violently backs away, accidentally slamming her head against the window frame with a loud thud. Both of them end up sitting on the floor with Utami clutching her aching head in pain while Kyoto watches her in bewilderment. Kyoto apologizes profusely and asks if she is all right. Utami glares at him with a deeply flushed face and asks if he knows what happens when someone makes her genuinely angry, which completely confuses him. She warns him that she completely loses her mind whenever she goes berserk, prompting Kyoto to ask what exactly happens when she does. She explains that she apparently starts laughing while repeatedly punching the other person, turning the entire room into a sea of blood, before she even realizes what happened. She claims this happens because she completely loses consciousness during her rage, leaving her target covered in blood, which leaves Kyoto completely speechless. She warns him that she almost reached that breaking point just now and tells him to be extremely careful going forward. She huffs and turns her head away in a huff, while Kyoto can only watch her with a strained look. Kyoto stands silently in the empty classroom and watches her walk out the door. Kyoto's sweat drops and reflects on how incredibly delusional of an otaku she is, noting that it is the very first time he has heard someone use such dramatic anime tropes in real life. Kyoto asks a classmate about Utami's middle school days, which catches the classmate by surprise. He explains that he was simply curious about what Utami was like back then, and the classmate muses that she probably was not much different from how she is now. The classmate adds that since they were never in the same class, she does not know many details, though she notes that Utami actually stood out more back then simply because of how isolated she was. The classmate explains that near the end of their third year, Utami became an easy target for others, because she would get stubborn and tell obvious lies when angry, which Kyoto silently notes matches the behavior he witnessed recently. She reveals that Utami was bullied severely by some mean girls, but refused to ask anyone for help, making it painful to watch even from the next classroom over. Kyoto processes the information and thanks her for sharing, which she cheerfully accepts. As they wave goodbye, Kyoto reflects on how Utami is shy, yet makes no effort to get along with others, hiding her fear of being alone behind defensive aggression to protect her pride. He observes that she lies to herself and pretends to be content with her isolation, ultimately leaving her lonely and gossiped about as an exhausting introvert. Kyoto realizes that he understands her behavior perfectly because she is just like he used to be. He reflects that his middle school self and Utami are essentially the exact same kind of person. During lunch, the group sits together to eat, and Tsureja loudly holds court over the conversation. Tsureja suddenly asks for his agreement on a topic, but Kyoto is completely zoned out, staring quietly towards the back of the room where Utami sits. Kara and Tsureja sharply call out to get his attention, prompting Kyoto to snap back and apologize for spacing out. Kara gazes at him intently, narrowing her eyes as she studies his behavior. She bluntly asks if he has feelings for Utami, sending a jolt of panic through Kyoto, while Nanakusa listens in the background. Kyoto flusteringly denies the accusation and asks why she would say such a thing, while Nanakusa stiffens. Nanakusa suddenly leans in with wide, intense eyes, while Kara teasingly adds that Nanakusa is very curious about his answer too. Kara points out that he has been visibly worried about Utami lately, prompting a nervous defense from Kyoto. Kara explains that he is always watching Utami, and even asked a middle school classmate for information about her past, teasingly asking if he is trying to make a move, which Kyoto frantically denies. Kyoto's sweat drops and retorts that he is not trying to make a move on her, while Nanakusa continues to tremble with panic right behind him. Tsureja jumps on the gossip and demands to know who this Utami girl is, while Kara continues to tease him, causing an irritated Kyoto to tell both of his noisy friends to shut up. Kyoto sighs in exasperation and flatly clarifies that he has absolutely no romantic feelings for Utami, urging Kara not to misunderstand him, though she casually brushes his protest off. When Nanakusa keeps up her strange teasing sound, Kyoto pokes her forehead and orders her to stop, reiterating that he is simply curious about her friend, because she is her friend. Nanakusa giggles with a relieved expression while Kyoto lets out another quiet sigh. Kyoto explains that even if it sounds cliché, it is only natural to look out for a classmate who is completely isolated from everyone else. Tsureja loudly declares that Kyoto is a great guy, which Kara agrees with, and Nanakusa happily joins in the praise while Kyoto stands by in silent embarrassment. Kyoto mentions that he actually tried to invite her to lunch the previous day, but got turned down, leaving him unsure of how to proceed, which catches Tsureja's sudden attention. Tsureja passionately steps in and tells Kyoto to leave the invitation to him, which leaves Kyoto confused. Tsureja proudly boasts that he understands a woman's heart and will go invite Utami himself, prompting Kara and Kyoto to enthusiastically tease him and egg him on. While the others are still laughing in the background, Nanakusa spots Utami walking by the classroom door and alerts them. Tsureja immediately charges out of the room to confront her, tapping her on the shoulder and talking confidently, while the others watch him from the doorway. As Kara and Kyoto wonder if Tsureja's pushy approach is going to backfire, they watch as Utami turns around and begins furiously yelling at him. Shortly after, Tsureja dejectedly walks back to the group, much to their blank amusement. Tsureja looks completely shell-shocked and warns them that she is bad news and should not be angered, prompting Kyoto to ask what she actually told him. Tsureja nervously relays her claim about knocking out delinquents in the past, without even remembering it, which Kyoto skeptically questions, while Kara scolds both of them for being pathetic. Kara confidently announces that she will handle the invitation herself, and grabs Nanakusa to take her along, leaving her slightly confused. Kara rapidly drags Nanakusa down the hallway, leaving Kyoto and Tsureja to watch them go. Kara and Nanakusa approach Utami at her desk, and Kara cheerfully invites her to have lunch with them the following day. Utami turns to look at them with a guarded expression, before resting her chin on her hand and bluntly asking why she should do that. Kara enthusiastically explains that she simply wants to eat lunch with her, prompting Nanakusa to silently marvel at how incredibly direct she is. Utami sits silently, looking deeply flustered and grumbling that she wants nothing to do with this, while Kyoto watches her from behind. Kara points out that their school break starts the next day and asks Utami to hang out with them tomorrow instead, which Nanakusa happily supports. Utami remains silent for a moment, letting out a small grumble in response. Kara claps her hands together and cheerfully declares that their plans to have lunch together are officially settled, ignoring Utami's grumpiness. Nanakusa hesitantly asks if she is included in those plans as well. Kara warmly reassures her that they are absolutely all going together, making Nanakusa smile with joy and declare that she really wants to go. As Kara and Nanakusa celebrate happily, a highly irritated Utami loudly commands them to wait a minute. Utami starts to protest, but Nanakusa quietly calls out her name, causing the group to look back at her. Nanakusa suddenly reaches out and grabs Utami's sleeve, catching her completely by surprise. Nanakusa begs her to go together, earnestly stating that she wants to go with her, which leaves Utami utterly speechless and blushing intensely. Utami can only let out a small, embarrassed grunt in response. The next day, Utami arrives at the shopping mall dressed in a casual hoodie and skirt. As Utami stands grumbling to herself near the entrance, Kyoto walks up and casually greets her. She huffs and turns her head away, leading Kyoto to silently observe that she is still as prickly as a cactus. Kyoto asks why she is waiting outside instead of at their designated meeting spot on the first floor of the plaza, and she defensively asks him the same question. Kyoto explains that he wanted to stop by the bookstore first, and she claims that she also arrived early to get something at the 100-yen shop. Kyoto silently recognizes that they are both lying. He reflects that introverts like them always get nervous in the morning and end up arriving much too early. Because they do not want to appear too eager, they often wander around or hide within sight of the actual meeting spot. Kyoto notes that once a couple of people finally start gathering at the meeting spot, they simply join in with a completely straight face as if they had just arrived. He reflects on the fact that he and Utami, the exact same introverted roots. She tentatively speaks up, but he encourages her to come along with him to meet the others. Kyoto suggests they head to the meeting spot since it is almost time, but she flatly refuses, so nobody thinks they arrive together, leading Kyoto to conclude that she has come to dislike him ever since the classroom incident. Kyoto recalls her yelling that there was no way Nanakusa would say something nice about her. He remembers her emotional outburst about always being mean to Nanakusa and calling him a liar. That particular outburst has remained firmly stuck in his mind ever since. She stubborn-mindedly claims she will walk over when she feels like it, but he tries to stop her by reassuring her that the others have not arrived yet anyway. Kyoto reaches out to pull her along, but as he grabs her, they both jolt in sudden surprise. Kyoto's physical pull catches her off guard. Utami apologizes, confessing she almost reacted aggressively out of reflex, but when Kyoto mentions her knocking him down previously, she jolts in sudden realization. She stares at him with a blushing face, leaving Kyoto nervous and confused by her reaction. They stand in silence, completely unaware that Nanakusa is watching them from around a corner. Nanakusa watches with a dark, creepy expression and whispers to herself about Kyoto knocking Utami down. Kyoto frantically yells that it was a misunderstanding, while Utami grips his shirt as Nanakusa approaches them with a terrifying aura, demanding to know what actually happened. Kyoto begs Utami to explain the situation, but she only clings to him even tighter in fear, which makes Nanakusa's eyes widen blankly. Nanakusa demands an explanation in a dark, rumbling voice, leaving Kyoto desperately begging her to calm down. A loud scream echoes through the area. Meanwhile, Tsureja complains that the others are late, while Kara cheerfully guesses that they must be sleepyheads. The group gathers at a conveyor belt sushi restaurant to begin their lunch outing. Everyone sits in a booth along the conveyor belt with Tsureja immediately stuffing his face with sushi. Tsureja continues to greedily shove sushi into his mouth, catching Kyoto's bewildered attention. When Tsureja cluelessly asks what he just ate, describing it only as something red and tasty, Kyoto deadpans that he has no way of knowing. Kyoto simply suggests that he just order the red plates from now on, a solution that Tsureja enthusiastically praises. Kara brightly asks Utami if she can call her by her nickname too, which makes Utami silently turn away with a pouting expression. Utami continues to look slightly defensive, while Kara sits across from her with a friendly smile. When Kara casually asks what kind of sushi she likes, Utami angrily snaps that she never gave her permission to use the nickname, while Nanakusa looks on with a nervous smile. Ignoring her protest, Kara casually mentions hearing that high school girls in Tokyo often do their homework and hang out at conveyor belt sushi joints after school. Kara cheerfully marvels at the trend, leaving a frustrated Utami shouting at her to pay attention. As Kara and Tsureja continue their lively conversation, Kyoto sits quietly beside a still irritated Utami. Nanakusa giggles happily as she sits beside Kyoto dressed in a cute maid-style outfit. Nanakusa happily calls out his name, prompting Kyoto to ask what is on her mind. She confesses that she accidentally used too much wasabi, leading Kyoto to warn her to be careful, while a pouting Utami watches them grumpily. Nanakusa cheerfully sings about the wasabi before reaching forward to grab her teacup. She leans far across Kyoto's lap to reach for the hot water faucet to refill her tea. Kyoto offers to refill it for her, but she strains to reach it herself, accidentally brushing her chest firmly against his arm. Kyoto jolts in shock as his face turns bright red, completely overwhelmed by the sudden physical contact. He frantically panics over the distinct sensation of her chest, while she remains completely oblivious and innocent. She happily finishes pouring her tea and goes right back to eating, leaving Kyoto completely frozen and speechless from the shock. Kyoto continues to panic silently over the physical contact, while Utami sits in a dark, gloomy silence right beside Nanakusa, who continues to eat happily. Utami shoots a terrifying glare at Kyoto, making him sweat with absolute nervousness. Kyoto desperately tries to break the tension by asking Nanakusa if the eel sushi is good, to which she happily agrees while Utami grumpily watches them. Kyoto immediately taps the ordering tablet to order some eel for himself to distract everyone, as Nanakusa continues to praise the dish. While Kyoto silently celebrates successfully distracting them, Kara turns to Utami to ask what is wrong with her all of a sudden, but Utami only mumbles in deep annoyance. When Kyoto asks if anyone wants to order anything else, Kara eagerly demands shrimp, while Tsureja loudly commands him to order every spicy tuna roll available. Nanakusa happily mutters that she wants chow and mushy, prompting Kara to chime in that she wants some too. Tsureja loudly demands some for himself as well, earning a quick scold from the others to shut up before they turn to ask Utami what she would like. After a brief silence, Utami suddenly demands a medium beer mug, which Kyoto initially agrees to before frantically telling her not to order alcohol. Utami grumpily changes her order to a tuna roll and Kyoto quickly inputs it while the others watch. Sometime later, the group heads out to shop, and Kara enthusiastically holds up a frilly girly sailor dress, telling Utami that she would totally rock it. While they stand inside the boutique, Utami looks down at the dress with a deeply flushed face, murmuring that it is far too cute for her. Nanakusa warmly encourages her, admitting she likes that kind of style too, prompting Kara to suggest they buy matching outfits and dress like twins. Meanwhile, Kyoto and Tsureja wait on a nearby bench, with Kyoto sighing and wondering aloud how many stores they have visited so far. Tsureja complains about how tedious the shopping trip is, and suggests sneaking off to the arcade, but Kyoto warns him not to because Kara will get sulky, explaining that this is simply how girls shop. Tsureja suddenly gasps in excitement as two stylish Gyaras walk past their bench. Tsureja sits up and stares intensely at the passing girls while Kyoto watches his reaction. Kyoto tells him that he is staring too much, and when Tsureja asks if it was really that obvious, Kyoto deadpans that he was practically staring holes through them. Tsureja cheekily points out that nostrils already have holes, earning a quick muttered insult from Kyoto. Tsureja passionately defends his love for Gyaras, praising their confidence, cool attitude, and sexiness, which only leaves Kyoto sweat-dropping in silence. Tsureja wishes there were some tan Gyaras around him, to which Kyoto replies that Nanakusa actually considers herself a Gyaru, even though she is not tan. Tsureja is confused and questions what exactly about Nanakusa makes her a Gyaru, and Kyoto lists her bright pink hair and her new way of speaking. Tsureja dismisses the idea and calls Nanakusa a weirdo with pink hair, causing Kyoto to silently apologize to her for his classmates' harsh verdict. Kyoto brings up Kara as a Gyaru instead, but Tsureja notes that she is fair-skinned and used to have a very boyish haircut in middle school before she adopted her current style. Tsureja admits he originally mistook Kara for a boy back then, which Kyoto finds highly interesting and secretly wishes he could have seen. Kyoto points out that from Tsureja's perspective, both girls must be completely out of his league, and Tsureja glumly agrees that he is just an outsider. Kyoto teases him that the girls probably view him as an outsider too, which Tsureja barks at him to shut up about, before admitting that they are still great fun to hang out with as friends even if he still does not understand Utami at all. Tsureja shudders and confesses that Utami is actually quite scary, making Kyoto tease him about still being afraid of her delusional anime rants right when Kara loudly calls for them to come over. Kara happily tells Nanakusa and Utami to come out of the dressing rooms as Kyoto and Tsureja turn to watch. Nanakusa and Utami step out, wearing their matching cute sailor-style dresses, with Nanakusa smiling while Utami pouts in embarrassment. Kara squeals with delight over how adorable they look together, declaring that twinsies are the absolute best, while Kyoto and Tsureja stare in surprise. Tsureja comments that they look like sisters, comparing them to a game streamer and a library committee member, which immediately insults Utami into demanding who he is calling a library committee member. Nanakusa shyly turns toward Kyoto and softly calls his name to get his opinion. She asks him what he thinks of the outfit, her face blushing deeply as she awaits his reaction. Kyoto smiles warmly and praises them both, calling them very cute, which makes Nanakusa smile with joy, while a deeply flushed Utami grumpily tells him to shut up. Kara proudly boasts that her fashion sense is on point as the two girls head back into the dressing rooms to change out of the clothes. Nanakusa eagerly asks if they should buy the dresses, and Utami shyly stammers that she does not mind if Nanakusa really wants to buy them. Hearing her response, Nanakusa happily declares that they should buy them, causing Utami to smile softly in agreement. Later, the group sits in a food court where Kara asks the boys to watch their shopping bags while she and Nanakusa grab drinks, and Tsureja leaves to find some food. Kyoto and Utami are left sitting alone at the table, quietly browsing on their phones in a slightly tense silence. The silence continues as both Kyoto and Utami remain seated across from each other, quietly browsing on their phones. Utami steals a couple of quick glances at Kyoto over her screen, but when he suddenly turns his head to look at her, she quickly hides behind her phone in a fluster. They both look back down at their devices, returning to the awkward quiet. Kyoto recalls her calling him a liar earlier, then speaks up to address her, prompting her to defensively ask what he wants. Kyoto explains that he has a personal policy of not telling lies, which leaves her looking surprised. He solemnly swears to her that Nanakusa's claim about her being kind was absolutely not a lie. Utami stares back at him in quiet disbelief, letting his words sink in. He adds that Nanakusa clearly expressed her desire to be close friends with her, and clarifies that he is not the type to tell cheap lies just to stay on her good side. Kyoto urges her to at least believe that much, while Utami looks directly at him with wide, quiet eyes. She hesitantly asks if he has been worried about her since the other day, and Kyoto folds his arms and admits that he has been feeling on edge about the situation. A soft, genuine smile breaks across Utami's face as she quietly chuckles. She affectionately calls him stupid, prompting Kyoto to tell her to shut up as he grumbles that he is simply a natural worrier. She warmly relents and says she will believe him if he is going that far, which coaxes a relieved smile from Kyoto. Kyoto suggests that she should also try to get along with Kara, because Kara is probably fond of her too, which Utami dismisses by murmuring that she does not need him to tell her that. As Utami softly notes that Kara can be annoying sometimes, Kara and Nanakusa cheerfully return to the table carrying their drinks. Kara slides a drink to Utami, who thanks her, and Kara enthusiastically asks if she also reads the fantasy series about the human-destroying healer, which Utami confirms. Kara beams and mentions that she watched the anime adaptation and found it incredibly good, while Nanakusa hands a drink to Kyoto, who thanks her. Kyoto is surprised to learn that the widely popular fantasy light novel has managed to appeal even to a complete gyaru like Kara. When Kara asks who her favorite character is, Utami names the protagonist Hiragi, and Kara happily agrees that he is cool, even if he can be a bit cheesy. Utami proudly boasts that Hiragi is just like her in his mindset and short temper, which excites Nanakusa, while leaving Kara laughing nervously at the comparison. Kara casually comments to Utami that the protagonist's last rampage in the Spirit Mountain arc felt like it was a bit too much. Kyoto and Nanakusa instantly look worried, noticing that Utami has suddenly gone completely dark and quiet. Utami looks up with a fierce, trembling glare and questions what Kara just said. Kara continues her critique of the series, arguing that the protagonist's steamrolling everything felt one-dimensional, and suggesting it would have been better if the characters had teamed up instead. Utami completely snaps, telling Kara that she seriously does not understand the series, which leaves Kara bewildered. Utami launches into a rapid, passionate explanation of the story's structure, defending the protagonist's dominating victory as the ultimate payoff and catharsis of the entire setup. She insists that Kara truly understands nothing about the work, leaving Kyoto stammering and Kara sweating in surprise. Utami points a finger directly at her and aggressively declares that she has absolutely no right to speak about the series at all. Utami pants heavily from the sheer exertion of her outburst, while Kara stares back in stunned silence. Kara nervously tries to calm her down, pleading with her not to get so worked up over a fictional show because she genuinely scared her. Utami looks away, her face pouting as she holds back tears of frustration. Utami abruptly grabs her things and states that she is going home while Kara desperately tries to call her back. Utami turns her back on them and coldly demands that they never speak to her again. A heavy silence falls over the table as the remaining three sit together, looking down at the empty seat and drink left behind. Kara looks down in deep guilt, sweating, as she quietly asks if she said something truly terrible. Kyoto gently reassures her that she was not in the wrong, pointing out that everyone is entitled to their own opinion, and that Utami was simply getting too worked up. However, Kyoto honestly adds that she probably could have phrased her opinions a little better, which surprises her. Kyoto reflects that he appreciates how clearly Kara speaks her mind, which is why he feels he should be honest with her when she says things that might be hurtful. He explains to her that what is important to people varies, and even if a hobby seems small to them, it might be incredibly precious to someone else, leaving Kara wide-eyed as she absorbs his words. Kyoto continues his advice, explaining that when someone genuinely loves something, it cannot simply be dismissed as a minor thing or no big deal. While Kara remains quiet, Nanakusa looks at Kyoto with deep admiration, silently marveling at how cool he is. Kyoto clears his throat and reassures Kara that he knows she did not mean to make fun of Utami. Kara quietly disagrees with his reassurance, catching him and Nanakusa by surprise. She admits that, while she did not consciously mean to mock Utami, the fact that those dismissive words came out so quickly means that deep down, she was likely looking down on Utami's interest. Determined to make things right, Kara abruptly stands up from the table and declares that she must go apologize to Utami immediately. Kara runs off to search for Utami, leaving Kyoto trying in vain to tell her to wait. Kyoto turns to Nanakusa and finds her smiling warmly back at him. Nanakusa giggles and praises him for being such a nice guy, which only embarrasses Kyoto into grumbling about what she is even talking about. She explains that she is referring to his mature advice about respecting what is important to others and not mocking what people love. She adds that despite his popularity, he still understands the feelings of introverts and otakus. She beams and giggles that a popular person who possesses such understanding is what makes him a truly nice guy. Kyoto looks away silently, privately wondering if Nanakusa would be disappointed if she ever discovered his hidden past as an otaku. Tsureja finally returns with his food and complains about the long line, before asking where the girls went, prompting Kyoto to explain that Utami and Kara had a minor argument. When Kyoto adds that Kara went after her, Tsureja panics in shock and asks if Utami is going to be covered in blood, earning an annoyed sigh from Kyoto about his tiresome delusions. Tsureja suggests they go search for the girls as well, and as they prepare to leave, Nanakusa continues to smile happily. As they walk, Nanakusa suddenly spots a group of girls cornering Utami near a store entrance. Tsureja wonders who the other girls are, and Kyoto suggests they get a little closer to investigate. The boys and Nanakusa overhear the girls condescendingly teasing Utami, mockingly asking if she is lost, or if she is entirely alone in high school as well. The girls continue their nasty teasing, mockingly asking if she got separated from her mother, or warning her that a lone high school student like her might get kidnapped, leaving Utami looking intensely upset and helpless. Tsureja asks who the confrontational girls are, and Kyoto explains that they are likely classmates from Utami's middle school, who used to tease her quite a lot. Tsureja calls their behavior disgusting, prompting Kyoto to suggest they intervene and help her, which Nanakusa immediately agrees with, as they hear Utami defensively shout that she is not a loner. Out of desperation, Utami loudly declares to her tormentors that she actually came to the mall today with her boyfriend. This sudden lie leaves Kyoto, Tsureja, and Nanakusa completely dumbfounded. Kyoto grabs Tsureja to hold him back from stepping out immediately, while Nanakusa anxiously peeks from around the corner to see what happens next. The classmates mockingly ask to see her supposed boyfriend, and Utami nervously stammers that they simply got separated for the moment. When they demand that she call him over, Utami excuses herself by saying her phone is dead, which the other girls immediately dismiss as a blatant lie. Tsureja demands to know why Kyoto is holding him back, but Kyoto calls him an idiot and warns that stepping in right now will only make the situation far more complicated. Kyoto silently laments that Utami made the foolish decision to lie about having a boyfriend, instead of simply stating that she had come to the mall with friends. Recognizing there is only one viable option left, Kyoto musters up his courage and addresses Nanakusa and Tsureja. He turns to them and nervously asks if he looks like a popular, outgoing kid. Nanakusa and Tsureja are completely baffled by his question, prompting a frustrated Kyoto to shout that he wants to know if he looks like a genuinely popular kid or not. Nanakusa immediately gets excited, pumping her fists, as she passionately reassures him that he is an extrovert who absolutely looks like a popular kid. Kyoto's confidence surges as he proudly embraces his status as a popular extrovert. Kyoto eagerly tells her to say it again, and Nanakusa happily repeats her enthusiastic praise, calling him the absolute best extrovert of all. Kyoto crazily demands more praise to pump up his confidence, and Nanakusa happily chants with him, which Tsureja watches with clueless amusement. Tsureja joins in on the chanting as he and Nanakusa raise their fists together, while Kyoto prepares to make his move. Kyoto proudly declares to himself that he is Kyoto Yuta, a popular, blossoming extrovert at the peak of his high school life. With his confidence fully charged, Kyoto charges forward with explosive speed to intervene. Meanwhile, the classmates sneeringly mock Utami for her obvious lie, pointing out that she has not changed at all, while Utami stands pouting in helpless silence. Just as Utami desperately tries to maintain her lie, and her classmate mockingly challenges her to bring her boyfriend, Kyoto loudly calls out to Utami, pretending to have been looking for her all along. Utami and her classmates turn around in absolute bewilderment to see him approaching. Kyoto casually places his hand on Utami's head, smiling, as he acts like her worried boyfriend, who was concerned when she did not answer his messages, asking her what is wrong. Though initially stunned, Utami quickly plays along with the act, stammering his name and apologizing that her phone died, which leaves her classmates staring in awkward disbelief. One of the girls recognizes Kyoto in surprise, prompting him to politely ask who they are, and Utami introduces them as classmates from her middle school. Kyoto flashes a charming, popular smile and introduces himself directly to her classmates as Utami's boyfriend. Utami blushes furiously and clutches her bag in sheer embarrassment, while her thoroughly intimidated classmates awkwardly acknowledge his introduction, leaving Kyoto feeling satisfied with his performance. Kyoto smoothly suggests they get going, and she happily agrees, leaving her classmates behind as they walk away together under Nanakusa's friendly farewell waves. While Tsureja happily munches on his food, Utami begins to fume with a terrifying dark aura of rage that seems to wither everything around her, causing Kyoto to sweat nervously. As they walk side by side through the mall, Kyoto glances back to ensure her old classmates are still watching them. Utami suddenly grabs and tightly squeezes his hand, whispering nervously that her classmates are still watching them. Utami puffs her cheeks and blushes furiously, reminding herself that they are only pretending to be a couple for the sake of the act. Utami grumpily teases him about his supposed policy against lying, pointing out that they are both liars now, which Kyoto nervously questions. After a brief hesitation, she squeezes his hand even tighter and quietly thanks him for stepping in. Just then, Kara suddenly appears, bowing deeply and apologizing sincerely to Utami for her previous insensitive comments. Kara dramatically scolds herself for speaking so confidently about a series she barely knows, which prompts Utami to softly apologize as well for overreacting. A cheerful Kara suggests they officially make up on the count of 3 and begins the countdown. On 3, Kara tightly embraces her, shouting that they are friends and declaring her love, which catches Utami completely by surprise. Exhausted by the emotional roller coaster of the day, Kyoto slumps over his desk and lets out a massive, weary sigh. When Kara asks why he looks so incredibly wiped out, Kyoto groans that all his energy has been completely drained, and he never wants to pull a stunt like that ever again. Tsureja praises Kyoto for being cool, and Nanakusa happily mutters about how hard he worked, which prompts Kara to tease him about having fun while she was gone, while Kyoto can only grumble in exhaustion. Kara pats Kyoto on the head and tells him he did a great job, causing him to sigh quietly. Kyoto worries that if they keep this up, someone is going to start making that strange jealous sound again, as Nanakusa glares darkly at them from behind. Nanakusa lets out a soft, jealous grumble, while Utami pouts and mutters that she thought she heard a strange sound. Nanakusa brightly greets Utami in the morning and asks if her new makeover looks good on her, catching Utami off guard. Utami is completely overwhelmed with silent, flustered thoughts, admiring Nanakusa's contacts, wavy hair, and cute ribbon, but struggling to find the right words to say under the school rules. She shyly looks away and stammers that the new look is not bad. Utami instantly regrets not giving her a more proper compliment, while Nanakusa simply giggles with absolute joy. A new chapter begins, focusing on a quiet, long-haired classmate sitting silently at a desk. The scene transitions to the schoolyard where the classmates are gathered outside. Nanakusa kicks the ball skillfully, earning praise from Kara, while a disappointed Tsureja admits he was hoping for another funny mistake. And a fuming Nanakusa complains about being called boring, while Utami boasts that it was easy. Utami grumpily warns Tsureja that he really should not make her angry. She repeats her warning about beating someone until she could see their bones, though she casually adds that she does not actually remember it. Tsureja shivers in terror at her claim of doing things unconsciously, when she blacks out, crying that losing one's memory is absolutely terrifying. While Tsureja frantically begs for forgiveness, Nanakusa giggles that Utami looks happy, prompting Kyoto to deadpan about her definition of happiness. Kyoto reflects that ever since their mall outing, Utami has slowly grown accustomed to their group's overall vibe. He is even more surprised to learn that the girls had a gathering during the holidays, remembering how Utami used to just spy on them from behind the trees, right when he notices someone else standing nearby. Kyoto points out the school teacher standing nearby, and they confirm her identity as she stands quietly by a tree. Kyoto wonders what the teacher is doing over there, but before he can think further, Kara cheerfully waves and calls out to her. As Komori-sensei waves goodbye and leaves, Kyoto watches her thoughtfully, feeling like her strange gaze from earlier is a sign that something is about to happen. After school, Kyoto is called to the guidance office, where Komori-sensei apologizes for taking up his time, which he politely brushes off. She reassures him that he has not done anything wrong, and Kyoto looks back at her in curiosity. Komori-sensei notes that Nanakusa and Utami have always struggled to fit in with their classmates, but observes that Kyoto has been getting quite close to both of them. Kyoto nervously points out that Kara and Tsureja are also part of their group, but the teacher warmly counters that he was clearly the primary connection that brought them all together. Kyoto admits that she might be right, silently marveling at how surprisingly observant the teacher is. She compares him to a bridge connecting the students of Class B, explaining that she brought him to the office to ask him to look out for a student named Mitsui. Kyoto recognizes the name as Mitsui Yuko, another student in their class, who does not fit in, noting that by fate, the boy actually sits directly in front of him in class. She reassures him that she is not forcing them to be friends, but simply asks him to lend a hand if he ever sees Mitsui in trouble. Kyoto playfully tells her that she could handle it herself, since she is incredibly popular with everyone in the class, but she firmly cuts him off and tells him to listen. She bluntly describes herself as a hypocritical slacker, leaving Kayota completely taken aback. She explains that her gentle voice and kind expression only make her popular because of the contrast with other PE teachers, but maintains that is the only reason. She smiles blankly and confesses that she only acts like a good teacher on the surface while feeling completely hollow and empty inside, which leaves Kayota sweating in confusion. Kayota's sweat drops as her backstory begins explaining how she devoted herself entirely to playing volleyball during her college years. She confesses that as soon as she started working and quit competitive sports, she completely lost her motivation to try hard at anything. She happily recalls slacking off during practice by pretending to be injured so she could eat ice cream, leaving Kayota stammering that he has no experience with that. She explains her philosophy of avoiding action if it is not the absolute best solution, prompting Kayota to ask if such an attitude is really appropriate for a teacher. She lazily dismisses the idealized image of a perfect teacher who always knows what to say, flatly stating that she has no intention of delivering inspirational speeches. Kayota deadpans, questioning whether it is actually appropriate for a teacher to admit all of this to one of her students. She chuckles and points out that Kayota likely already suspected she was not just a simple good-natured teacher anyway. Komori-sensei continues explaining that people with a keen eye will eventually figure out her true nature, so she has learned it is best to be upfront with them early on. She confesses that this is the first time in her 4 years of teaching that she has ever opened up like this to a student, admitting she is surprised by her own candor, and even regrets it slightly. When Kayota asks why she decided to tell him all of this, she smiles and replies that his facial expressions were simply too amusing to resist. She adds that he is clearly not the type to go around spreading what she said, and when Kayota protests that she cannot know that for sure, she confidently replies that she does. She explains that Kayota is someone who acts according to his own sense of what is right, and more than anything deeply understands his role within the community. She points out that he knows there is no benefit in spreading rumors, which makes people like him highly trustworthy. Kayota reflects on her words, realizing that her description is exactly the kind of popular, reliable person he has been striving to become. Komori-sensei suddenly realizes what she said and wonders if she just delivered an inspirational speech, which Kayota quickly brushes off by teasing that it was not actually that good. She suggests they return to the main topic, right as the sharp blow of a whistle echoes from the gym outside. During the basketball lesson, Komori-sensei loudly scolds Tsureja for using his feet, which he defensively yells back that he already knows. Tsureja insists to the teacher that it was not on purpose, and the ball simply happened to bounce off his foot while Kayota watches. Kayota turns his head as he hears someone calling out to Yuko nearby. A flashy class, a student named Takabana approaches Yuko to tease him about being gloomy again today, prompting Yuko to quietly apologize. Kayota observes that today's physical education lesson is a combined class, and the 3 flashy boys surrounding Yuko are from class next door. The class of boys mockingly tease Yuko about his long bangs and offer to cut them with Takabana, jokingly comparing Yuko's hair to his dog Taro's fur. The class of students break out into loud mocking laughter, while Yuko sits quietly on the floor, keeping his head down. Komori-sensei blows her whistle to announce a substitution, allowing an exhausted Tsureja to step out while the class of boys bid Yuko a mocking farewell as they walk away. Kayota stands a distance away, quietly observing Yuko as he sits completely isolated on the gym floor. Kayota turns his head toward Komori-sensei, who looks back at him with a knowing smile. The teacher directly asks Kayota if he is also curious about Yuko. Returning to their conversation in the guidance office, Komori-sensei brings up the topic of Mitsui, which Kayota quietly acknowledges. She gently explains that she thinks it would be a wonderful thing if Mitsui could finally find his own natural, comfortable state in the class. She thumps her chest in determination and promises to do whatever she can to help, telling Kayota to let her know if anything comes up. Kayota notes that the teacher seems to trust him quite a bit, though he wonders if she is simply stringing him along with her good mood. Still, he decides that if he wants to become the reliable, popular kid he strives to be, he should probably go along with her request. Returning to the present in the gym, Kyoto sits down next to Yuko and quietly calls his name. Yuko looks up in surprise, quietly greeting Kyoto as he notices him sitting down. Kyoto asks if the flashy class of boys from earlier were his classmates in middle school, and when Yuko nervously confirms it, Kyoto advises him to either talk back or simply ignore them if they are being annoying. Yuko hesitates, looking down as if wanting to say something more, which catches Kyoto's curiosity. Yuko quickly retreats and says it is nothing, leaving Kyoto staring at him in silence. Kyoto privately fumes, not because of the vague response, but because he notices Yuko actually has a very good-looking face, realizing that with just a bit of effort, the boy could easily become popular with far less struggle than he had to endure. Mentally questioning why Yuko does not try harder, Kyoto maintains his friendly persona and reassures him that he can always talk to him if something is bothering him, since they sit next to each other in class. Yuko quietly apologizes and asks if Kyoto is annoyed by having him sit directly in front of him, which leaves Kyoto completely baffled. Yuko continues to apologize, worrying that the way Takabana and the others tease him is annoying to watch and blaming himself, while Kyoto tries to tell him that is not the case at all. Kyoto starts to protest, but Yuko suddenly sighs that the constant teasing is because he has a good-looking face. Kyoto freezes in absolute disbelief, staring blankly as he processes this incredibly conceited remark. Yuko continues to explain in all seriousness that everyone picks on him solely due to his good-looking face, which unfortunately causes trouble for everyone around him. Kyoto deadpans and quietly mutters that he sees staring at the gloomy boy in utter bewilderment. Yuko dramatically laments his handsome features, crying that he wishes he had not been born with such a good-looking face, and apologizing for the trouble it causes. Yuko trembles and groans in dramatic self-pitying despair, while Kyoto can only watch him from behind in absolute exhausted silence. Kyoto stretches his arms on the gym floor after their substitution, while Yuko remains quietly curled up nearby. Kyoto looks up, shielding his eyes from the bright sunlight streaming through the gymnasium windows. Kyoto smiles awkwardly, sweating slightly, as he silently wonders how to deal with Yuko, admitting to himself that he might actually detest the boy's bizarre attitude. Later, Kyoto spots Utami in the school hallway and waves to call her over. Kyoto approaches her and says that he was just looking for her, making her step back suspiciously and ask what he wants. He explains that since midterms are starting next week, he wants them to study together, which catches her completely off guard. Kyoto pleads with her, admitting that he is not feeling confident about his English exam this time, causing Utami to hesitate and blush slightly. Kyoto clasps his hands together and desperately begs her for help, telling her that even though there is no benefit for a top-tier student like her, she is the only person he can rely on. Utami is completely stunned by his dramatic plea, her face turning bright red in shock. Utami reluctantly relents, pouting as she mutters that she has no choice but to help, prompting Kyoto to enthusiastically thank her. When she asks where they will be studying, Kyoto suggests a family restaurant because there are not many places that can easily accommodate 5 people, making her sweat as she wonders if he meant his house. Utami stops and glares back in shock, questioning why there are 5 people, and Kyoto casually replies that he meant their usual 5-member group. As Utami glares in silent annoyance, Kyoto explains that the group had already discussed studying together just a little while ago. Kyoto nervously notices her pale, shivering face and asks if she is all right, which she ignores with a furious scowl. She suddenly flashes a malicious grin and insists she is totally fine, making Kyoto sweat with apprehension as he calls out her name. Kyoto looks down to point out that she is heavily grinding her shoe on top of his foot, which she sweet-talkingly dismisses while continuing to twist her heel. Kyoto screams in pain, asking what she is doing, while she casually acts innocent as his cries echo outside. Sometime later, The five friends gather inside a family restaurant, sitting in a booth with their study materials laid out. Utami grumbles at Kara that she needs to start learning things on her own, but Kara carefreely giggles that some things are simply impossible to understand no matter how much she tries. Utami smugly declares that there is not a single problem in high school English that cannot be solved with actual thinking, prompting an impressed Kara to ask if that was a quote. Kyoto tells Kara not to trouble Utami too much since she has her own exams to worry about, and Kara playfully agrees while Utami silently shoots Kyoto another intense glare. When Kyoto jokingly asks why she is glaring at him and uses her nickname, Utami aggressively kicks her legs under the table and angrily yells at him not to call her that. Utami growls in frustration, prompting Kara to comment on her grouchiness and offer her some sweets. Utami turns away, continuing to pout in silent embarrassment. Kara pops a treat into Utami's mouth, who quietly eats it, while Nanakusa calls out to Kyoto. Nanakusa asks Kyoto for help with her math homework, and he readily agrees, explaining a factoring problem on her page. As Kyoto continues his explanation, Nanakusa simply stares at his face with a warm, doting expression. Kyoto notices her gaze and tells her to look at the notebook instead of his face, but she only giggles innocently. She happily notes that she understands now and praises his excellent teaching skills, which Kyoto brushes off by saying she is simply a quick learner. Nanakusa giggles and thanks him, prompting Kyoto to silently admit to himself that she seems to be getting cuter by the day, even if it is awkward for him to think so after rejecting her. Utami grinds her teeth in sheer dark frustration, sending a wave of panic through Kyoto. Utami grumpily asks Kara to swap seats with her later, but Kara whines and begs her not to tear them apart. Kyoto teasingly asks if he can be taught Utami's version of English too, which completely flusters her into demanding what that even means. Utami finally gives up and grumbles her consent before demanding that Kara get her some ice cream, which Kara cheerfully agrees to do. As Nanakusa feeds her more treats, and she greedily demands, another Tsureja walks back and sighs that they are completely hopeless. Tsureja takes a sip of his drink and self-righteously preaches that tests are meant to measure their own abilities rather than relying on others, which Kyoto silently agrees with before calling his name. Kyoto deadpans and asks why he is the only one at the table throwing a massive one-man banquet, pointing at the large pizza and plate of fries in front of him. Tsureja casually continues to eat his pizza, arguing that family restaurants are meant for eating and drinking, while Kyoto questions if he should actually be studying instead. Tsureja lazily explains that he only needs to pass, and studying the day before is perfectly fine, leaving Kyoto completely speechless. When Kara and Utami return, Kara bluntly questions why Tsureja is even there with them. Tsureja loudly protests that he will not let them leave him out of their plans, while Utami pinches her nose and complains that he reeks of pizza, telling him to eat something that does not smell so strong. When Tsureja defensively questions what she means, she tells him to eat rice instead, which only starts another silly argument as Kyoto watches them in silence. While Tsureja loudly begs to his pizza and gets firmly shut down, Kyoto silently laments that they are supposed to be studying. Nanakusa giggles happily as she repeats Utami's complaint about the pizza smell, prompting a confused Tsureja to ask what part of that was even funny to her. Kyoto suggests they take a brief break and order some refreshments, which Kara enthusiastically agrees to. Kara asks what everyone is looking forward to once exams are over, but Utami pragmatically points out that the tests are still over a week away. Kara argues that imagining their post-exam plans helps them focus, sharing her own excitement for an upcoming match that Tsureja eagerly plans to watch live in the middle of the night. Kyoto skeptically asks Tsureja if he was not just going to cram the night before anyway, but Tsureja loudly insists that cramming still counts as putting in effort. Kara happily has her own plan to completely binge watch a highly interesting foreign drama in one sitting. Nanakusa plans to catch up on anime and manga releases she has been saving up, while Utami admits she has no set plans, but would like to visit a manga cafe, to check out the first chapters of various series. Tsureja teases them for being such homebodies, but Kara quickly points out that he is essentially the same. Tsureja turns the question on Kyoto, catching him off guard as he stammers in surprise. When asked about his own plans, Kyoto hesitates to think, realizing with a pang of nostalgia that his only thoughts are of anime, manga, and light novels which he can no longer openly pursue. Tsureja asks if he has no hobbies at all, and Kara points out that while he watches a lot of different shows, she wonders if he has an absolute favorite. Tsureja jokingly asks if he is just a shallow trend follower who hops from one popular thing to another, which makes Kyoto sweat in silent discomfort. Kyoto weakly laughs and plays along with the trend follower label, while Kara eagerly begins to gossip about another teacher until they are firmly told to get back to studying. Kyoto reflects bitterly on how much he detests being called a trend follower, privately admitting that his entire extroverted lifestyle is just a shallow cover-up, and that he felt far more fulfilled when he was a dedicated otaku. He deeply questions if his quest to become a popular extrovert has ultimately made him a much more shallow person. His somber thoughts are interrupted as he walks outside and notices Mitsui standing nearby. Yuko continues to dramatically lament his good looks, while Kyoto deadpans to himself about how dealing with him is a major pain. Back at the table, Kyoto sighs that he has no choice, prompting Kara to ask what is on his mind. Kyoto casually tells Tsureja to come with him for a moment, and when Tsureja jokingly asks if he needs a restroom buddy, Kyoto grabs him and orders him to just shut up and follow. Kyoto leads Tsureja outside to where the class of boys are still cornering Yuko, who continues to sigh in distress. Kyoto suddenly calls out cheerfully to Yuko, pretending to be surprised to run into him there. The class, students particularly Takabana, immediately look nervous when they realize Tsureja is with him. Tsureja cheerfully greets Takabana and asks what he is doing there, but Takabana bluntly replies that it is none of his business. Tsureja playfully throws his arm around Takabana's shoulder, teasing him for being so cold, since they used to be rivals back in middle school. When Tsureja notices Yuko and asks if the two of them are close, Takabana awkwardly sweated and claims that they are indeed close. Tsureja adds that Yuko sits next to Kyoto in class, prompting Yuko to quietly confirm it. Sensing the awkwardness, the class of boys quickly suggest leaving, and Tsureja waves them off as they walk away. Kyoto asks Yuko if he is all right, and Yuko quietly confirms that he is. Kyoto tells Yuko to just stay exactly the way he is, prompting Yuko to proudly declare that he will always be himself. Later, Kyoto pushes his bicycle as he walks home alongside Nanakusa and Utami. Nanakusa asks Kyoto why he is walking his bicycle instead of riding it, and a blushing Utami quickly chimes in that she wanted to walk to the station with him anyway. While Nanakusa giggles, Kyoto reflects that Kara's parents picked her up by car, and Tsureja left early because he was starving. Kyoto remembers something and pulls Nanakusa's manga out of his bag to return it, prompting her to ask if he finished reading it. Nanakusa happily agrees that the volume was excellent, and Kyoto comments on how the story ended on a massive cliffhanger after the drama adaptation's timeline. Nanakusa brightly says that the next volume comes out the following week, which catches Kyoto's interest. Kyoto asks to borrow the next volume once she is done reading it, which she happily agrees to while Utami watches them and pouts jealously. Kyoto asks Utami if she has ever read the series, and she shyly responds that she might start causing Nanakusa to softly tease her about previously refusing to. Utami flusteringly claims she simply changed her mind and asks Nanakusa to lend her the volumes after midterms, which Nanakusa happily agrees to do. Nanakusa mentions that she watched the latest episode of another anime the previous day, but Utami admits she has not watched it yet and has actually lost interest in the series. When Nanakusa expresses surprise, since she thought Utami loved the original manga, Utami explains that the anime adaptation's battle scenes and comedic timing do not appeal to her, even if she likes the voice acting. Kyoto recognizes the title as Garlic Dragon Melancholy an anime currently airing that he used to read in manga form, before giving his copies away to his sister, noting that he does not even watch the adaptation anymore. Kyoto privately wonders if the anime is disappointing to fans of the original, and questions why he feels slightly glad about it, before directly remarking on how much the girls love manga. Nanakusa happily s her deep love for manga light novels and anime, before asking if Kyoto also reads them, which he quickly denies. Kyoto insists that he does not read or watch those kinds of things very much. Utami scolds him for wasting the opportunity since subculture is their national pride, while Nanakusa eagerly offers to lend him some more manga. Utami blushes and shyly offers to give him some of her own recommendations as well, which Kyoto politely accepts. Kyoto reflects on how he still gets overwhelming urges to consume light novels, manga, anime, and dating sims, noting that doing so privately at home would go completely unnoticed by his popular friends. However, he admits he fears returning to those hobbies like a recovering addict, anxious that setting foot back in that world would completely undo all his hard work to become a popular extrovert. His thoughts are interrupted as he turns to address Utami. In the background, Nanakusa and Utami continue their conversation, eagerly discussing an upcoming anime adaptation of another series and wondering who will voice one of the main characters. Watching Nanakusa and Utami chat happily, Kyoto reflects on their dynamic. This panel is part of a split-screen transition showing Kyoto's silent curiosity. He silently wonders why the two girls appear so much more unburdened and free than he feels. A new chapter begins focusing on their school life. Arriving at the shoe lockers in the morning, Kyoto spots Yuko and warmly greets him, causing the quiet boy to turn around. Yuko blushes slightly and quietly acknowledges Kyoto, who looks back at him. They walk down the hallway together, and Kyoto silently feels like he should bring up the events of the previous day. Deciding to break the ice by discussing Yuko's interests, Kyoto asks him if he likes anime and manga, and if he has been watching the currently airing show. Yuko hesitantly admits that he is watching the series, and when Kyoto asks which character is his favorite, Yuko explains that he has found Ryo particularly cool ever since the latest story arc. Yuko suddenly tenses up and softly begs Kyoto for a favor, leaving him confused. Yuko looks directly at him with a serious expression, pleading with Kyoto to just leave him alone. Yuko warns him that associating with him will only cause Kyoto to get targeted by the bullies as well, but Kyoto questions if Yuko is truly satisfied with letting things remain the way they are. Yuko stubbornly insists that it is fine and tells him to let it drop, prompting Kyoto to ask if he can ask one last question. Kyoto asks why Yuko thinks Takabana targets him, and Yuko instantly blushes and confidently shouts that it is obviously because of his extremely good-looking face. Back in the classroom, Yuko sits at his desk while the teacher conducts the lesson at the blackboard. Kyoto rests his chin on his hand, silently reflecting on Yuko's plea to be left alone. He grows increasingly irritated as he recalls Yuko's conceited remark about his face, feeling that it was an uncalled-for way to talk to someone. He observes that, while Yuko is undeniably good-looking, it is frustrating that the boy makes absolutely no effort to use his appearance to help himself fit in. After school, Kyoto heads over to a vending machine to purchase a drink. Kyoto crouches down nearby with his drink, letting out a weary sigh and muttering about how exhausting everything has been. He suddenly jolts in shock as a voice calls out right beside him. He looks up to find Kara standing there waving at him cheerfully. When a startled Kyoto tells her that she scared him, Kara laughs and teasingly confesses that she has been stalking him ever since he left the classroom. Kyoto sweat drops and calls her behavior creepy, asking why she would do such a thing. Kara explains that she got curious because he had been acting unusually gloomy and downcast all day long. Kara straight up asks if he is worried about Mitsui, prompting Kyoto to silently wonder if he was really acting that gloomy all day. When Kyoto asks her how she can tell and jokingly wonders if she can read minds, Kara simply smiles. She playfully boasts that she actually is a mind-reading mentalist, before immediately laughing and admitting she is just kidding. Kara reveals that she actually overheard his entire conversation with Mitsui at the shoe lockers earlier that morning. She remarks that things looked pretty tense between them, adding that perhaps she is just meddling in things that are none of her business. Kyoto admits that he finds it hard to believe Mitsui is genuinely content with his current lonely situation in Class B. Kara agrees that Takabana from Class A is indeed super annoying, and Kyoto admits that getting flatly rejected by Mitsui earlier really got under his skin. Kara crouches down next to him, and the two of them sit side by side against the wall. She turns to him and asks why he cares so much about Mitsui's well-being. She points out that it is not just Mitsui noting that he treats Nanakusa and Utami in the exact same overly caring manner. Kyoto maintains his usual stance, repeating that it is only natural to want to help whenever some classmate does not fit in with the rest of the class. Kara looks thoughtful and murmurs that, while she understands his point, there is still something else to it. She quietly apologizes in advance, in case she is wrong about her assumption. She explains that with him, his helpfulness feels less like a simple whim and more like an intense self-imposed sense of duty. She adds that, while his actions are undeniably wonderful, he seems to be pushing himself in a way that does not feel entirely natural. Realizing she might have overstepped, Kara quickly apologizes and tells him to just forget she said anything, while Kyoto silently takes a sip of his drink. Kyoto looks up and quietly responds that he actually understands exactly what she means, catching her by surprise. Kyoto silently reflects that he does indeed have his own deeply personal reasons for caring so much about Nanakusa, Utami, and Yuko. Kyoto finally opens up to her, revealing that he was actually a complete introvert until middle school. Kara can only stare at him in absolute wide-eyed disbelief. Kyoto explains that in middle school he was gloomy, eccentric, and always alone because he did not try to make friends, but since he hated that version of himself, he changed into the person standing before her today. He adds that his past drives him to intervene whenever he sees someone like Mitsui struggling to fit in, before nervously asking Kara if she finds his story creepy. Kara responds with a sweat drop, telling him that he is acting as though he used to be a hardened criminal or something. Kyoto looks surprised as she questions why she would ever freak out over the simple fact that he used to be an introvert. She explains that she does not believe in labeling people or drawing arbitrary lines between introverts and extroverts, calling that kind of division uncool. Kyoto silently agrees with her sentiment, though he reflects that such a relaxed perspective is probably something only a natural extrovert could casually say. Kyoto asks Kara if she has ever actually experienced being completely alone, which catches her off guard. He presses further, asking if she has ever known the pain of being looked at with cold eyes, or treated as if she did not even exist, leaving her momentarily speechless. He explains that his past experiences allow him to understand and empathize with people who are isolated, because he went through that exact same pain. Kara processes this and asks if her status as an extrovert means she is entirely incapable of understanding how introverts feel. Kyoto quickly clarifies that he is not saying she cannot understand, but rather that his own past simply allows him to detect their loneliness more quickly and keenly. Kyoto suggests that his ability to keenly sense Nanakusa's and Utami's feelings is the only reason they became close, while Kara hums thoughtfully. Kara stands up, dusting off her skirt. Kara looks at him and tells him that he is entirely wrong, which Kyoto questions. She gently explains that his concern for Mitsui has nothing to do with his past as an introvert, but is simply because he is a genuinely nice person. She adds that going out of one's way to look out for isolated people is not something just anyone is capable of doing. She asks why he uses his past as a former introvert as an excuse to minimize his own kindness, admitting she really does not understand his self-deprecating attitude. She clarifies that while she agrees that people with D experiences can understand one other, his actions go beyond that. She acknowledges that if she had tried, she might not have succeeded in getting Nanakusa and Utami to open up their hearts. She wonders why he talks about himself, as if he is beneath everyone else, or acts scared that she would hate him for his past, teasing him for treating his introversion like a criminal record. Until he sheepishly admits it is a bit strange, which she enthusiastically agrees with. Kara frantically ruffles her hair, complaining that she does not quite get it, but his words are making her feel super itchy inside and completely confused. She lets out a groan of sheer embarrassment while Kyoto quietly watches her reaction. She softly thanks him, and when Kyoto asks in surprise if she is for real since she actually succeeded in lifting his spirits, she looks back at him. Kyoto smiles and adds that she really is a cool person, prompting a pleased Kara to giggle and ask if he really thinks so. Kara clarifies that she is not saying his decision to change himself was a bad thing, pointing out that he must have worked incredibly hard to pull off his current makeover. Kyoto quietly admits that he did indeed work like hell to change himself, which coaxes a warm smile from her. She playfully pats him on the head and praises him for being a hardworking boy, but Kyoto grumbles at her to stop, pointing out that his hair wax is getting all over her hands. He jokingly warns her not to get his wax all over him as they laugh, and he tosses his empty drink container into a nearby bin. Kara asks what kind of training he underwent to achieve his popular persona, and Kyoto explains that he studied fashion and corrected his way of speaking. He adds that he also completely stayed away from manga light novels and anime, which shocks Kara into demanding why he would go that far, to which he replies that he felt it was necessary to truly move past his introverted habits. Kara calls his extreme measures crazy, arguing that having otaku interests does not automatically make someone an introvert. But Kyoto quietly counters that she does not understand. He admits that he is starting to worry less about those rigid boundaries now and might actually start watching anime again. Kara looks back at him and suggests that next time he should what he genuinely enjoys. Kyoto stares at her, his eyes widening in surprise at her words. He smiles and agrees to do so while his heart begins to pound rapidly. Kyoto watches her walk, finding everything about her precious and silently feeling proud of himself for falling in love with her. After school a few days later, Kara panics in the classroom because there are only 3 days left before their exams, while Kyoto silently worries that he might fail his English test. Kyoto asks if they are not going to study today, but Utami explains she has cram school, and Kara apologizes because she has other errands to run. Kyoto realizes that only Nanakusa is left to study with him today, which she happily and blushingly agrees to. Tsureja noisily demands that Kyoto ask him about his studying plans too, but when Kyoto relents and asks, Tsureja proudly shouts that he is not studying at all. Kyoto and Nanakusa are left sitting at adjacent desks in the quiet classroom, focused on writing in their notebooks. Kyoto asks Nanakusa if she is good at Japanese, to which she shyly confirms she is, prompting him to think for a moment. He asks if she has any helpful tricks for writing modern literature essays, catching her slightly off guard. Kyoto works through the material as Nanakusa sits beside him, quietly processing his explanation. Outside, the afternoon sky begins to dim over the school building as students stretch. Kyoto stretches his arms and groans that he is completely exhausted, while Nanakusa continues to write happily beside him. He mentions that he is craving something sweet like ice cream, prompting her to ask if he means from the shop by the town station. Kyoto confirms it is just a little further away and asks if she wants to stop by on their way home, which pleasantly surprises her. Nanakusa happily beams and agrees, and Kyoto suggests they study for another 30 minutes, privately musing that exams are not too difficult even with minimal studying. As they walk, a group of flashy class, a student walks past them in the hallway, loudly bickering about their grades. One of the class, a boy, loudly laughs that anyone who fails the upcoming exams is a total moron, while Kyoto and Nanakusa watch them in silence. Kyoto silently reflects that he has come to view their loud, boastful behavior as the exact kind of extrovert he does not want to be, resolving to just ignore them. He hears Takabana from class tease Yuko and ask for his agreement, leaving the quiet boy looking extremely uncomfortable as Kyoto glances back. Kyoto continues walking past as the class a group surrounds and leads Yuko away. Yuko keeps his head down, silently shivering in distress. Kyoto cold-heartedly tells himself that he does not know Yuko, and there is absolutely no need to help him, while Nanakusa watches Kyoto's unusually stern expression. Takabana mockingly invites Yuko to join them at a family restaurant, assuring him they will probably not force him to pay, while Kyoto convinces himself that Yuko brought this on himself by pushing him away earlier. Takabana laughs and teases Yuko, while Kyoto tries to harden his heart and ignore the situation entirely. Despite his cold resolve, Kyoto realizes that ignoring someone in trouble is simply not in his nature. Kyoto suddenly stands up with a clatter and apologetically asks Nanakusa if they can save their ice cream trip for another time, which surprises her. Nanakusa sits silently holding her pen as she processes his sudden change of plans. With a soft, understanding smile, Nanakusa quietly agrees to postpone their outing. As Kyoto gathers his things, Nanakusa quietly notes that this helpful nature is just who he is. Kyoto sheepishly agrees before walking out of the classroom, while Nanakusa simply giggles softly. Kyoto walks down the empty school corridor and spots Yuko walking with Takabana and the other class of boys. Suddenly, Kyoto reaches out, grabs Yuko from behind, and confidently tells Takabana that he is borrowing Yuko for a moment. Caught completely off guard, Yuko turns around in wide-eyed shock as Kyoto grips his collar. Kyoto drags Yuko away without hesitation, ignoring Takabana as the other boy demands to know what he wants and shouts for them to wait. When a thoroughly flustered Yuko stammers to ask what he is doing, Kyoto bluntly tells him to just be quiet as they walk away. Back in the staff room, Komori-sensei sits at her desk, lazily eating a melon pan. The office door slides open, and Kyoto steps inside to politely excuse himself, catching her attention as she continues to chew. She smiles lazily and greets him as she swallows her food. When she asks what is going on, Kyoto apologizes and asks if he can borrow the career counseling room they used recently, while Yuko stands nervously behind him. Recognizing his request, Komori-sensei willingly hands over the keys to the room, and Kyoto takes them with a polite thank you before telling Yuko to follow him. Kyoto politely excuses them, leaving the office under the teacher's knowing gaze. They enter the quiet career counseling room with Kyoto wearing a deadpan expression, while Yuko shivers with absolute anxiety. Kyoto sits across a desk from Yuko, directly calling his name and demanding to know why he refuses to ever ask for help when he is in trouble. Yuko quietly repeats his previous warning, explaining that he did not want Kyoto to get dragged into his mess as well. Kyoto flatly counters that he will not get dragged down, confidently stating that even if something did happen, his close group of friends would never just stand by and watch. Kyoto presses Yuko, noting that refusing help simply because he does not want to be a nuisance is not his only reason, leaving Yuko speechless. He urges Yuko to the real reason, explaining that he cannot understand otherwise, and that leaving it unsolved simply bothers him. Yuko steals a quiet glance at Kyoto's completely serious and focused expression. Yuko turns his head away, struggling to find the words. A quiet, heavy silence falls between them as Kyoto waits for his answer. As the clock ticks away in the quiet room, Yuko hesitantly begins to speak. He explains that his anxiety actually stems from his face, confessing that, ever since elementary school, he has been too good-looking. He recalls how everyone would eagerly strike up conversations with him at school and family gatherings, even when he did not do anything at all. Kyoto remains focused and quietly tells him to go on. Yuko admits that because he was never good at talking, he could never properly carry on a conversation with anyone. He explains that people would ultimately walk away looking deeply disappointed, viewing him as a boring person. Yuko confesses that he absolutely hates that disappointed look because it genuinely scares him. Yuko explains that he purposefully avoids making friends and Kyoto finishes his thought realizing that Yuko prefers isolation over the pain of disappointing others. Kyoto silently processes the revelation, realizing that Yuko genuinely viewed his exceptionally good-looking face as his main problem. Kyoto suggests that Yuko should simply work on improving his conversational skills, noting that even minor changes in the way he speaks could make a massive difference. Yuko immediately dismisses the suggestion, claiming he lacks the necessary talent, which Kyoto quickly disagrees with. Kyoto suggests that for starters, he could try working on his pessimistic mindset, making Yuko let out a defeated groan. Yuko suddenly snaps in frustration, loudly shouting that Kyoto simply does not understand his struggle. Yuko glares directly at him with teary, desperate eyes, leaving Kyoto completely taken aback by his sudden intensity. He passionately yells that someone like Kyoto, who can easily get along with anyone, could never possibly understand his painful feelings. Yuko clenches his fists tightly against his lap, bitterly telling Kyoto that a popular extrovert like him could never possibly understand the struggles of an introvert. Yuko loudly insists that Kyoto is entirely incapable of understanding, while Kyoto tries to interrupt and reason that being an introvert or extrovert is completely irrelevant to the current situation. Yuko continues his outburst, complaining about how easy it must be for a natural-born extrovert who can make friends effortlessly, without even trying, leaving Kyoto completely stunned. Yuko smiles bitterly, adding that Kyoto must have plenty of free time and energy to waste his attention on someone like him. Kyoto interrupts his rant, asking who exactly claimed that he was a natural-born extrovert, which leaves Yuko completely dumbfounded. Kyoto pulls out his phone, taps the screen a few times, and holds it directly in front of Yuko's face, telling him to look. Yuko gasps in shock as he looks at the screen, which displays Kyoto's middle school yearbook photo, showing a completely different, unkempt version of himself with messy hair and thick glasses from just a few months ago. Yuko stares in complete disbelief, unable to believe the photo is really him, as Kyoto scrolls through even more pictures from his middle school trips and festivals to prove his point. Yuko is utterly horrified by the pictures, bluntly calling the middle school Kyoto an incredibly lame and cringy-looking introvert, which instantly irritates the current Kyoto. Yuko nervously asks why he would keep such embarrassing photos on his phone, and Kyoto explains that he keeps them so he will never forget his past. He explains that those pictures serve as a constant reminder of the pain he went through back then, and more importantly, the immense effort he put in to change. Kyoto details the grueling do-or-die process of his transformation, explaining how he forced himself to study style, watch unfamiliar media, alter his speech, and completely distance himself from his old otaku hobbies. Yuko sits quietly at his desk, listening to the explanation in stunned silence. Kyoto looks directly at Yuko, firmly stating that he cannot forgive the dismissive comments Yuko just made about his life. He passionately declares that he fought with everything he had to become an extrovert, suffering intensely to make that change. He tells Yuko that he is fundamentally different from people who are naturally outgoing, ordering him to remember his painful effort well. A heavy silence fills the counseling room as both of them sit quietly across from each other. Kyoto challenges Yuko's preconceptions about introverts and extroverts, asking him what he actually wants to do now that he knows those mental barriers are just in his own head. Yuko looks down at his lap, hesitating as he prepares to answer. Yuko looks up with a determined, passionate expression and declares that he wants to change, earning a warm, encouraging smile from Kyoto. Yuko explains that he wants to change like Kyoto so he can learn to talk properly and make friends, and Kyoto encouragingly tells him that he can do it. Kyoto adds that he was a far more annoying introvert than Yuko will ever be, asserting that if he could successfully change, then Yuko can definitely do it too. Kyoto smiles and asks Yuko if they are already friends, which catches Yuko by surprise and makes him smile warmly. Kyoto immediately deadpans and states that he has no intention of saying that, causing a shocked Yuko to scream in utter disbelief. Kayota firmly tells Yuko that they are obviously not friends yet, and warns him not to think he can get what he wants without putting in any effort, leaving a defeated Yuko to ask what he should do. Kayota explains that while improving his speech will take time, Yuko can change his appearance immediately, prompting a curious Yuko to ask if he means his hair. Yuko hesitantly admits that he is terrible at visiting hair salons, but Kayota bluntly states that he does not care and tells him to just cut his own bangs. Yuko whines that he lacks confidence, but Kayota tells him to stop complaining since he has a good face that would look fine, even if he went bald, leading to a loud argument where Kayota tells him to trade faces if he hates his looks so much. When Yuko skeptically asks if a simple haircut can really make a difference, Kayota points out that they have a classmate who changed her entire life just by dyeing her hair. Kayota pictures Yuyu and tells Yuko to change himself so he can stand up to Takabana properly, which surprises Yuko. Kayota says that changing will also bring more people to Yuko's side, prompting the quiet boy to call his name. Yuko asks if Kayota will be on his side too, and Kayota promises that he will support him because he hates those bullies anyway. Yuko looks at Kyoto's reassuring smile and softly agrees to his plan. The scene shifts to the exterior of the school building as evening begins to fall. Kayota walks down the empty school hallway and pauses in surprise as he hears someone in the classroom. Kayota steps inside the room to find Yuyu sitting at her desk, and she warmly welcomes him back. When Kayota asks what she is doing there so late, Yuyu blushes and giggles that she waited because she wanted them to walk home together. Yuyu asks how his talk went, and Kayota sighs that what happens happens, which she playfully repeats with a sweet smile. As they prepare to leave, Kayota reaches over and gently pats Yuyu on the head, catching her completely by surprise. Yuyu blushes furiously and stammers in confusion at his sudden gesture as they stand together in the classroom. Kayota tells Yuyu that her hair color really suits her, and when a pleased Yuyu asks if he really thinks so, Kayota happily confirms it. As they walk down the hallway together, Kayota praises her for changing up her look, and Yuyu giggles happily and agrees. The next morning, Kayota walks down the school corridor and notices a loud buzzing commotion coming from the classroom. Kayota grins, realizing that the buzzing atmosphere is exactly like the one from the pink hair incident, and proudly concludes that Mitsui must have made his move. As the classroom continues to buzz with gossip, Kayota reflects on how a handsome guy like Mitsui only needed a hair change to drive the girls crazy, finding it almost irritating. Kayota drops his bag on his desk, silently wondering what kind of handsome heartthrob Mitsui has turned into. Kayota cheerfully greets Mitsui in the morning, prompting him to slowly turn around. Mitsui turns around, revealing his face with his long bangs neatly swept back by multiple hairpins, exposing his soft and stunningly feminine features. Kayota freezes in absolute jaw-dropping shock upon seeing Mitsui's incredibly beautiful face. Kayota weakly points out his hair, and a blushing Mitsui nervously explains that he tried changing his look just like Kayota suggested. Mitsui nervously asks how it looks, while Kayota silently panics to himself, screaming that Mitsui looks exactly like an incredibly beautiful girl. Kayota awkwardly tells Mitsui that it suits him, almost scarily so, and a relieved Mitsui smiles brightly and says he is glad. When Kayota asks why he went with hairpins, a flustered Mitsui defensively asks if there are extroverts who do that too. Mitsui explains that since he is terrible at hair salons and was too scared to cut his hair himself, he simply had to improvise. Kayota silently reflects that using hairpins is a bold technique only top-tier handsome guys can pull off, but in Mitsui's case, it has made him look like a complete beautiful girl. Utami suddenly approaches Kyoto's desk and suspiciously demands to know what on earth he said to Mitsui. Kara also joins them and teasingly asks if Kayota steered Mitsui's transformation toward his own personal tastes in girls. Kayota aggressively denies the accusation, insisting that he only suggested Mitsui change his look, while Kara shoots him a highly skeptical glare. Utami bluntly calls Kayota a pervert, prompting a thoroughly flustered Kayota to loudly protest that she is completely wrong and beg them to stop looking at him with such suspicion. As Kyoto continues to loudly deny their accusations, Mitsui shudders in the background, while Kara and Utami keep glaring at Kyoto with heavy suspicion. Suddenly, Takabana and his class, a friend, slide the classroom door open, and Takabana is completely stunned to see Mitsui demanding to know what on earth happened to him. Takabana excitedly tells Mitsui that he looks like a girl now and is basically Yuko-chan, while his friends chime in that he is actually incredibly cute. Sensing the tension, Kyoto quietly steps forward and places a reassuring hand on Mitsui's shoulder. Mitsui gulps nervously as Kyoto looks on with a calm and steady expression, preparing to face the class of boys together. Takabana enthusiastically invites Mitsui to study with them later and offers to treat him to a parfait because he is so cute. Mitsui suddenly slams his hands down on his desk and loudly commands Takabana to shut up, catching the class of boys completely off guard. Takabana can only stare in absolute dumbfounded silence at Mitsui's sudden outburst. Mitsui hesitantly begins to speak, recalling how things have been ever since they were in middle school. Mitsui suddenly shoves Takabana back and angrily shouts that he is such a pain to deal with. Takabana stammers and asks why he is acting so aggressive all of a sudden, but Mitsui fiercely orders him to shut up and just leave him alone as the entire classroom watches. Mitsui clenches his fists and desperately yells at Takabana not to get jealous just because he has a good face, repeatedly calling him a loser. A thoroughly flustered Takabana demands to know what he just said, while another boy in the classroom loudly mocks Takabana by repeating Mitsui's insult about his good face. Kyoto and Mitsui, a silent, meaningful glance with Mitsui looking determined to stand his ground. Takabana mutters in embarrassment and confusion, completely unaware that Kara, Utami, and Kyoto are watching him. The group joins in on the teasing as Kara mockingly agrees, while Utami warns Takabana not to pick on Mitsui just because of his looks, and Kara adds that jealous guys are incredibly lame. The rest of the class starts booing Takabana, with the girls calling him an eyesore and telling him to leave Mitsui alone, leaving a frustrated Takabana to grumble at everyone. Takabana and his friends stand completely defeated as the entire classroom turns against them. Kyoto is left thoroughly confused as he overhears Takabana muttering that he has been trying to do this since middle school. Takabana bursts into tears, sobbing that he has actually been trying to get close to Mitsui this entire time, while his friends pat his shoulders to comfort him. Kyoto awkwardly raises his hand and asks Takabana if his real goal all along was actually to get close to Mitsui. Takabana defensively shouts that it is obvious, demanding to know why else he would go out of his way to visit a different classroom just to bother him. Kyoto's sweat drops and bluntly points out that Takabana's way of approaching people is simply far too clumsy. An embarrassed Takabana points back at Kyoto and loudly accuses him of constantly getting in the way, adding that Kyoto even dragged Mitsui away without asking. Kyoto looks guilty and awkwardly stammers that he might have been in the wrong after all. Kyoto raises his hand to sincerely apologize to Takabana for interfering. Takabana angrily wipes his tears and tells Kyoto to remember this before storming out of the classroom. The group watches in silence as Takabana and his class of friends finally leave them alone. With the room quiet again, Mitsui gently turns to Kyoto and quietly calls out his name. Mitsui beams and happily announces that changing his look went incredibly well, just like Kyoto suggested. Kyoto smiles sweatily and privately reflects on how out there the makeover and its conclusion turned out to be, while Mitsui blushes and prepares to speak. Mitsui blushes and shyly asks Kyoto to be his friend, making Kyoto's heart skip a beat in surprise. Kyoto panics internally as he struggles to resist Mitsui's completely adorable feminine appearance, wondering how he can be this cute. Kara grins with amusement at the scene, while Utami stands behind them hissing with quiet rage. Yuyu suddenly approaches from behind, bringing a terrifyingly cold, dark aura with her. Yuyu glares directly at Kyoto with blank, swirling eyes and a completely frozen smile. Kayota frantically waves his hands and shouts that their reactions are totally wrong, while a cheerful Kara greets Yuyu, who continues to emit a frozen aura next to a furious Utami. Kayota loudly insists to the girls that Mitsui is actually a guy, but Mitsui quietly calls out to him anyway. Mitsui tilts his head and blushingly asks if it is fine anyway, looking incredibly pretty. Cornered between Yuyu's pitch-black glare and Utami's boiling anger, a terrified Kayota can only desperately beg them to wait. Kayota reflects on his past self, thinking about how his former introverted self had his crush stolen by an extrovert. But today, he managed to successfully steal a feminine-looking boy away from an extrovert. Inside the career counseling room, Komori-sensei tells Kayota that he has really gone and done it now, prompting a bewildered Kayota to ask what she means by that. Komori-sensei reassures Kayota that she means it in a good sense, offering a plate with her daifuku as proof. She explains that she is offering him her leftover lunch treat, but she immediately snatches the plate back, as Kayota dryly thanks her for the pitiful offering. Komori-sensei claims the treat as her own anyway, prompting an irritated Kayota to ask what her deal is. Komori-sensei smiles and suggests that they split the treat evenly. The treat is neatly split into 2 halves on the plate. While eating her half, Komori-sensei praises Kayota for doing a wonderful job, noting that Mitsui has successfully settled into the class, even though his hairpin hairstyle originally surprised her. Kayota admits that the transformation was unexpected for him as well before deciding to ask her a serious question. Komori-sensei asks if this is some sort of personal preference of his, prompting an outraged Kayota to slam the table and loudly deny the accusation. Komori-sensei explains that the class rumor portrays Kayota as a pioneer of a new sexuality, which leaves him utterly devastated. Shifting topics, Komori-sensei asks Kayota what method he used to get Mitsui to open up to him. Kayota awkwardly refuses to comment, privately realizing that he got far too emotional during his talk with Mitsui in the counseling room. Kayota recalls his intense outburst from that day, and cringes with embarrassment, reflecting that his ideal extrovert persona is supposed to be far more relaxed. Komori-sensei suggests from off-panel that being emotional is actually a good thing. She gently adds that it is nice to act on one's feelings, sometimes noting how exhausting it must be to constantly maintain an ideal persona. Kayota is taken aback and asks her what she means by his ideal self. Komori-sensei explains that a homeroom teacher's first job is to learn about their new students, which sometimes involves looking into their school records and past conduct in middle school. She reveals that she heard about his past from his middle school teacher, and a stunned Kayota realizes how she found out. She recalls that seeing his complete transformation on the day of the entrance ceremony left her both surprised and deeply impressed, though she also sensed a certain fragility in him. Kayota repeats her word with confusion, asking if she meant fragility, and Komori-sensei calmly confirms it. Komori-sensei explains that she wondered if maintaining his new persona was suffocating for him, but she admits with a smile that she was probably worried over nothing. As Komori-sensei takes a sip of her tea, Kayota silently admits to himself that her guess was entirely correct, and that he had indeed begun to feel suffocated living as his ideal extrovert self, until recently. While she continues to eat, Kayota reflects that Kara's words and facing Yuko head-on helped him break free, wondering if his teacher had actually seen right through him this entire time. Kayota begins to think that she might actually be a genuinely good teacher, and he quietly calls out to her. Before Kayota can finish his thought, Komori-sensei cheerfully cuts him off to apologize, admitting that she accidentally ate his half of the daifuku as well. Looking out the window, Kayota listens to her argue that his lack of touch makes him partly responsible, and that it is not her fault, prompting him to silently conclude that his high opinion of her was just a figment of his imagination. Kayota vacuums his bedroom floor as a new chapter begins, reflecting that midterms are finally over, and he managed to score a decent average of 75. Looking at his test results, Kayota admits that the study group helped him secure much better grades than he originally expected. Kayota looks over the overall ranking of his friends on the midterm exam where they all scored well, just as a loud voice suddenly calls out his nickname. Kayota's little sister Kanagi pops her head into his room and enthusiastically demands that they go to the mall together. Kayota reminds her that he already told her he has a friend visiting today, but she carefreely retorts that she does not care. Kanagi faceplants onto his bed and loudly declares that Kayota is going to play with her today instead, begging him to play. Kanagi grumpily pouts that tests are finally over, and she is bored before bluntly asking if the visiting friend is his girlfriend, which leaves Kayota completely dumbfounded as he asks how she even came to that conclusion. When Kayota adds that he also has another friend visiting tomorrow, a frustrated Kanagi begins to aggressively bite his leg, ignoring his pleas to stop, until the doorbell suddenly rings. While Kanagi continues to cling to his leg and gnaw on it, insisting she wants to say hello to his friend, Kayota firmly pats her head and tells her not to get in the way. Kayota opens the front door to find a nervous Mitsui standing on the porch, softly offering a quiet greeting. Kanaga's eyes widen as she loudly exclaims that the visitor is an incredibly cute girl, prompting a panicked Kayota to quickly cover her mouth and apologize to Yuko for his sister's rudeness. Holding his struggling sister under his arm, Kayota explains that she is his little sister while a polite Yuko quietly introduces himself. Kayota orders Kanagi to go play in the living room for the day, leaving his little sister to pout in disappointment as she leaves. As they walk down the hallway, Yuko remarks on how exceptionally large Kayota's house is, and Kayota explains that it functions as his main family home. Kayota opens his bedroom door and mentions how crowded the house gets with relatives during holidays, adding that his parents are away on a trip today, so Yuko should feel free to relax. Yuko hands over a bag containing every volume of a manga series, which Kayota happily accepts, before telling Yuko that he can grab whatever he wants from the bookshelf. Yuko hesitates as he stares at the bed, prompting Kayota to ask if there is something wrong with it, which a flustered Yuko quickly denies. Yuko blushes and shyly explains that he just thought the bed smelled exactly like Kayota. Kayota tells himself that it is perfectly fine since they are both guys, but he still feels incredibly flustered by the comment. Kayota panics internally, desperately reminding himself that his preferences are not going to change even though Yuko looks extremely cute today with his pale skin, slender legs, and pleasant scent. Yuko comments on how warm it is in the room and decides to take off his jacket, while a panicking Kayota desperately tells himself that he is absolutely not attracted to him. Kanagi suddenly slams the bedroom door open and yells that there is a weirdo standing right in front of the house, catching a startled Kayota off guard. Kanagi reveals that the weirdo has pink hair, prompting Kayota to tell her to check it out, while a worried Yuko runs down the stairs. The intercom monitor reveals Yuyu standing outside and staring directly into the camera with an intense, unblinking glare. Kanagi shrieks in terror upon seeing Yuyu's scary face on the monitor, while Kayota's phone suddenly begins to buzz in his pocket. Kayota pulls out his phone and reads an ominous text message from Yuyu stating that she knows Yuko is inside. Both Kayota and Kanagi stand frozen in absolute silence, completely horrified by the message. Kayota opens the front door to find Yuyu giggling about how big his house is, while a thoroughly embarrassed Utami insists that they only happen to be in the area, and that she tried to stop Yuyu from coming over. Utami whispers to Kayota that Yuyu refused to listen and had terrifying eyes, leading Kayota to realize that Yuyu was probably eavesdropping on his conversation with Yuko about hanging out. Kayota deduces that Yuyu must have overheard their plans from the adjacent seat in the restaurant and rushed over because she felt it was too dangerous to leave the two boys alone. As Yuyu and Utami cheerfully excuse themselves and walk inside, Kayota is left completely baffled, wondering how Yuyu even discovered where his house is located. The front door handle clacks and Yuko turns around in surprise as he hears someone call his name. Yuyu giggles softly as she enters the bedroom while Utami sweatily apologizes to Yuko for intruding on their hangout. Utami spots the manga series on the table and asks Kyoto if he is reading it, prompting him to explain that Yuko brought the volumes over, which surprises her. Utami turns to Yuko and happily mentions that she reads the exact same manga, coaxing a pleased smile from him. When Utami excitedly begins to discuss a shocking flashback arc from the series, Kyoto quickly cuts her off to beg for no spoilers, since he just started reading it, causing a laughing Utami to apologize. Utami looks around at the massive bookshelves and directly asks Kyoto why he was hiding the fact that he is a total otaku. Yuyu giggles and teases Kyoto about his otaku hobbies, prompting a flustered Kyoto to tell them to shut up and grumble that a lot of stuff happened in his past. Utami asks what stuff he is talking about, bluntly asserting that he was probably just too embarrassed to be outed as an otaku. Kyoto silently reflects on how he brought back all his hidden books and merchandise, realizing that forcing himself to avoid his hobbies was completely pointless. Utami inspects the bookshelf and admits Kyoto has pretty good taste, but Kyoto tells her to stop acting so high and mighty, calling her a try-hard otaku and starting another argument. Utami suddenly stops and gasps in shock as she pulls a book off the shelf, recognizing it as a famous art book. Utami eagerly asks if she can look through the art book, and Kyoto readily gives her permission. Yuko asks if he can check out a concept art book, which Kyoto allows, but when Yuyu asks to see his middle school yearbook, Kyoto firmly shuts her down. Kanagi slams the door open again to announce another problem, pausing in surprise to see his room filled with girls before telling Kyoto that there are people in front of the house. Kanagi describes a giant person with mushroom hair standing outside, prompting a worried Utami to suggest that maybe Kyoto shouldn't answer the door. Kyoto opens the front door to find Tsureja loudly exclaiming how huge the house is, while a sheepish Kara apologizes for being unable to stop him. Kyoto asks Tsureja why he is there since they were supposed to hang out tomorrow, and Tsureja loudly protests that he heard the others were coming over today and did not want to be left out. Kara explains that Yuyu texted her earlier that morning to ask for Kyoto's address, which finally solves the mystery for Kyoto of how Yuyu found his house. Kara admits she assumed he was hanging out with Utami or Yuko, so she gave Yuyu the address, and Kyoto admits he is just relieved Yuyu obtained the information peacefully. Kara sighs and explains that once she mentioned the plans to Tsureja, he immediately insisted on tagging along as well. Tsureja loudly complains that it was unfair for them to keep all the fun to themselves, while a tired Kyoto begs him to give him a break. Kyoto asks Tsureja what they are going to do about their plans for tomorrow, and Tsureja confidently shouts that they are obviously coming tomorrow as well. Kara sighingly addresses Kyoto and explains that Tsureja is always like this, leaving Kyoto to conclude that there is simply no helping it. Tsureja and Kara enter Kyoto's bedroom, where Tsureja comments on the spacious room while Yuyu happily welcomes Kara. Kara cheerfully greets Yuyu, Utami, and Yuko, apologizing that they ended up crashing the hangout. Utami bluntly orders Tsureja to stand out in the hallway because of his large size, causing a panicking Tsureja to yell in outrage as Yuko looks on nervously. Kara sniffs the air in confusion and asks Utami if she is wearing perfume, to which Utami replies that she is actually wearing body cream. Kara gets close to Utami's neck to compliment the pleasant scent, causing an embarrassed Utami to let out a strange noise and tell her to stop. Kara teases Utami for making a strange noise, prompting an outraged yell from Utami, while Kanagi asks Yuyu why her hair is pink, and Yuyu replies that it is because she is a Gyaru. A fascinated Kanagi exclaims that Gyaras have pink hair and asks if they also talk in that strange way. Yuyu confirms that is how Gyaras talk, prompting an excited Kanagi to declare that she will start talking like that too, while Tsureja calls out to Yuko in the background. Tsureja casually notes that Yuko looks exactly like a girl again today, leaving a flustered Yuko to trail off in embarrassment. Tsureja quickly adds that Yuko's name is super cool anyway. And when Yuko looks confused, Tsureja defensively points out that he was only trying to pay him a compliment. Looking at his chaotic group of friends, and his sister talking all at once, Kyoto sweatily concludes to himself that his bedroom has officially become completely full of chaos. Suddenly, Tsureja spots a book on Kyoto's shelf, prompting a silent gasp of horror from Utami and Yuyu. Tsureja pulls out Kyoto's middle school yearbook, prompting Kyoto to yell in panic, while Yuyu and Utami eagerly gather around to see what his past self looked like. Kyoto begs Kara to stop them, but Kara laughingly declines and argues that looking at yearbooks is just a normal part of visiting someone's house. Tsureja and Utami burst into absolute uncontrollable fits of laughter as they open the yearbook, looking at Kyoto's middle school photo. Tsureja and Utami mercilessly tease his mop-like hair and grumpy expression, prompting a thoroughly humiliated Kyoto to scream at them to shut up. Yuko and Yuyu look at the photo and softly comment that the old Kyoto is actually pretty cute, leaving a flustered Kyoto to mutter that the compliment does not make him happy. Kara remarks on how wild it is that Kyoto transformed himself so completely, while Yuyu smiles warmly and notes that the photo serves as proof of just how incredibly hard Kyoto worked to change. Kara calls Kyoto's transformation completely crazy, while Utami admits that he is a genuinely good person now, even if he looks like a completely different person compared to his middle school self. Utami mockingly praises Kyoto's hard work, while trying not to laugh, prompting a grumpy reaction from him. But Yuyu comforts him by saying her own yearbook photo looks completely different too. Tsureja excitedly suggests they play a video game together, prompting Kyoto to explain they need to move to the living room where the console is, while Kanagi also encourages everyone to head downstairs. Kara asks to borrow Kyoto's laptop, so the non-gamers can watch foreign dramas, enthusiastically explaining to Utami that they are going to watch a mystery show. As Kyoto brings over his laptop and charger, Kara describes the mystery drama's plot about an ex-con artist detective, prompting Utami to admit she might actually prefer watching that over playing games. Tsureja grabs a controller and aggressively yells that he was planning to crush Utami in the game, leaving her to simply let out a weary sigh. Utami smiles smugly and warns Tsureja that it is too bad for him because she is actually incredibly good at the video game. Kyoto sweatily reflects on how seriously Utami is taking her competitive gaming. Utami borrows the art book, and Kara decides to borrow a soccer manga, to which Kyoto readily agrees. But when Yuyu tries to sneak off with his middle school yearbook, Kyoto firmly tells her to leave it behind. As Kanagi and Tsureja loudly lead the way downstairs, Kyoto calls out quietly to Yuko, who is walking behind them. Kyoto apologizes to Yuko for the sudden group intrusion, but Yuko politely assures him it is fine, adding that he actually used to play the video game online quite a lot. Yuko blushes and softly adds that he would like to hang out again with Kyoto on another day, just the two of them. Kyoto panics, internally wondering why their conversation has suddenly taken on a romantic comedy vibe, and questioning why Yuko is so incredibly cute. Yuyu suddenly pops up right behind Kyoto with a dark aura, staring blankly at Yuko and prompting him to sweatily claim he was only kidding. Downstairs in the living room, everyone gathers around the television screen to prepare for the gaming match. Tsureja sweatily shakes his controller in complete distress, as he is thoroughly defeated, while a smug Utami pouts proudly beside him. Utami smugly declares that this is the clear difference in their skill levels, warning him never to talk down to her again, though she accidentally trips over her words at the end. Tsureja retorts that she shouldn't have tripped over her words right at the end, prompting an embarrassed Utami to yell at him to shut up as she throws a book at his head. Utami turns back to tell Kara that they can start watching the drama now, while an excited Kara cheers that Utami is cool and incredibly good at the game. Kyoto grabs the controller from Tsureja and offers it to Yuko, asking if he wants to play next, which a blushing Yuko shyly accepts. Meanwhile, Kanagi shows Yuyu some childhood photos from a family trip to Hokkaido, explaining that she was in kindergarten, while Kyoto was in elementary school, prompting Yuyu to gush over how incredibly cute Kyoto was. Kanagi eagerly asks about herself, and Yuyu warmly reassures her that she was also incredibly cute back, then making the young girl cheer happily. Yuko tells Kyoto that he is ready to start, and Kyoto enthusiastically agrees as they begin their match. Yuko quickly wins the match and cutely giggles that Kyoto is a loser, leaving an annoyed Kyoto to grumble about his irritating defeat. Kyoto gasps in shock at the sudden teasing, prompting a blushing Yuko to quickly apologize and explain that he only said it out of habit. When Kyoto asks what kind of habit that is, Yuko explains that his classmates have recently been begging him to call them losers or noobs, so he ended up doing it frequently. Kyoto quietly responds that he actually does not mind if Yuko says it to him too, which pleasantly surprises a blushing Yuko. Kyoto tells him to go ahead and give it a try, and Yuko nervously agrees to do so. Yuko quietly whispers the insults, but Kyoto interrupts and instructs him to say his name first, and deliver the line with a much more cheeky, sassy attitude. Yuko blushes and delivers a cheeky insult with a sweet smile, and a highly satisfied Kyoto grins, privately admitting that the sassy remark actually makes him want to play harder and put Yuko in his place. Kyoto sweatily tries to defend himself, as Yuyu and Utami seethe with massive dark auras, growling in absolute jealousy right behind him. Over by the laptop, Kara teases Utami about the dynamic of a beautiful and bratty guy, prompting an annoyed Utami to tell her to shut up. Tsureja suddenly addresses Yuko and confidently proclaims that he is a macaronist, leaving a completely baffled Yuko to repeat the word in utter confusion. A heavy, awkward silence falls over the boys as Tsureja sits in a highly serious posture on the floor. Tsureja suddenly drops into a deep bow and begs Yuko to teach him everything about video game fighting, while a sweat-dropping Kyoto asks if he was actually trying to say Meister instead of macaronist. Kyoto clarifies that Tsureja simply wants Yuko to coach him, which Tsureja enthusiastically confirms. Tsureja passionately clenches his fist and shouts that he wants to beat that annoying little devil Utami to a pulp in their next game, while an irritated Utami glares at him in the background. Tsureja continues to bow and plead for his Meister's guidance, leaving a sweat-dropping Yuko to look over at Kyoto for help. Kyoto suggests that since Tsureja is so serious, Yuko should teach him a little bit, prompting Yuko to hesitantly agree as a delighted Tsureja cheers for his new teacher. Yuko asks Tsureja which fighter he uses, and Tsureja loudly replies that he wants anyone strong, while Kyoto decides to watch some dramas with the girls as they progress through the first episode. The group spreads out across the tatami mats with Yuko and Tsureja focused on their game match, Kanagi looking at photos with Yuyu and Kyoto joining Utami and Kara by the laptop. Kara squeals in delight over the screen, gushing about how precious the relationship between the detective and assistant is. Kyoto comments that even though he only started watching midway through the show, is quite interesting, which Kara and Utami eagerly agree with. Kara notes that there are still 15 episodes left, making it practically impossible to finish the entire series today. Kanagi looks up from the floor and happily suggests that everyone should just stay over for a sleepover. A wave of silent shock spreads across the room as the teenagers all freeze in reaction to her sudden suggestion. Kara hesitates, while Yuko voices his concern that a sleepover is too sudden, and they would end up being a massive bother to his family. Kyoto scratches his chin and says he will try asking his parents, but notes that it will probably be fine. Everyone's eyes sparkle with excitement as they realize they might actually get to have a sleepover together. Yuyu giggles at the thought of a sleepover, while Kara cheers that it is going to be a long night as Kyoto prepares to make his call. Once they secure permission from everyone's parents, Utami takes charge and announces they have a lot to discuss, prompting Tsureja to playfully salute her as the chairwoman of the committee. Kyoto comments on her hyped-up position, and Kara laughs that Utami is clearly looking forward to this like crazy, prompting an embarrassed Utami to yell at her to shut up. Utami asks if they are set on sleeping arrangements and futons, and Kyoto assures her that they have plenty of room in the house. Kyoto explains that they usually have twice this many relatives staying over during major holidays, so space will not be an issue. Kyoto suggests that the boys can use his bedroom to sleep, in which Yuko processes quietly. Kyoto decides to let the girls use the large guest room instead, so they can have more than enough space. Yuyu suddenly turns around and asks Kyoto what they are going to do about Yuko's sleeping arrangements, causing Kyoto to sweat nervously. Yuyu stares at him with an extremely intense, suspicious glare, prompting a panicking Kyoto to quickly stammer that it will be fine since Tsureja will be sleeping in the room with them too. Under Yuyu's terrifyingly close, silent glare, Kyoto desperately promises her that he absolutely won't do anything inappropriate. Yuyu peeks through the doorway with a dark, intense look, whispering that she trusts him, which sends a cold shiver of sweat down Kyoto's neck. While Yuyu continues to ominously watch from the doorway, Utami points out that they also need to go buy some pajamas and other daily essentials, since they did not plan to stay over. Kyoto argues that buying pajamas just for one night is a hassle, and so is carrying them back, proposing that he can simply lend them some of his own clothes instead. Kara points an accusing finger at him, and loudly exclaims that Kyoto is totally trying to get them to wear oversized shirts for that boyfriend's shirt look. A red-faced Kyoto desperately tries to explain himself, but Utami blushes and admits it really does come off that way, while Kara sits on the floor and insists that she finds the idea completely fine. Yuyu cheerfully raises her hand and announces that she does not mind wearing his clothes either. Yuyu giggles cutely as Kyoto, sweat dropping but smiling, relents and promises that he will lend her some clothes. Kyoto asks Yuko if he is fine with borrowing clothes since they are both guys, and a blushing Yuko quietly agrees, while Kara eagerly asks Kyoto to show them which shirt she gets to wear. Kyoto pumps his fist in silent triumph, imagining how great Kara will look in his shirt. But when Tsureja tries to suggest borrowing a shirt, Kyoto instantly shuts him down, pointing out that it is physically impossible due to his size. Tsureja aggressively grabs Kyoto's shoulders and yells about being left out again, but Kyoto tells him to think about how tall he is, as Utami watches them in silence. Utami shyly mutters that she could probably borrow some clothes too, to avoid wasting money, but Tsureja bluntly tells her that she would be much better off borrowing his little sister's clothes instead. Utami glares in silent, deadly outrage as Tsureja clarifies he means it purely from a physical perspective. Kara slaps Tsureja on the head, leaving him confused, while Kyoto sweatily tries to pacify Utami by assuring her that she can use his clothes since he has plenty of options. Utami blushes furiously and huffs that she would probably catch a cold from the draft anyway if she wore oversized clothes. Utami turns to Kannagi and asks to borrow her pajamas, and Kannagi enthusiastically agrees, cheering that they can wear matching ones. Kannagi beams and says she is so happy, leaving a sweat-dropping Kyoto to silently pray to God to please let his little sister grow a bit taller. Later, the group heads to the supermarket, and Kyoto notes that they have gathered all the daily necessities and only need to purchase food now. Kyoto suggests having curry for dinner, which Kara agrees is tasty and easy to make, while Utami points out that it is much better than trying to make something weird. Tsureja mutters that curry is too basic and proudly boasts that he can easily make beef stroganoff, while Kyoto deadpans at his ridiculous claim. Kara points out that they need to buy dog food for Tsureja, and Utami tells her to just give him cabbage cores instead, prompting a terrified Tsureja to scream an apology and plead that he loves curry and wants to eat it with everyone. The group stands before a shelf packed with various packages of meat, trying to decide what to put in their curry. A massive debate breaks out over the curry ingredients, with Tsureja voting for chicken, Kara demanding beef, Utami arguing for pork, and Kannagi wanting seafood, while Kyoto notices a package of pickled kelp in their shopping cart. Utami defensively asks Kyoto if he has a problem with the kelp, prompting Tsureja to smugly conclude that she was indeed the one who snuck it into the cart. Tsureja laughingly teases her by saying she is not an old lady, causing a highly irritated Utami to seethe with anger. Utami releases a terrifying aura and tells Tsureja not to make her genuinely angry, causing a terrified Tsureja to bow deeply and apologize, while pleading to eat curry with everyone. Kyoto quietly turns his attention to Yuko, who is standing in silence nearby, and gently places a hand on his shoulder. Kyoto encourages Yuko to add whatever he wants to the cart too, since they are splitting the bill, prompting Yuko to blushingly agree. Yuyu holds up a bag of salmon jerky and giggles that it is nostalgic, and Kyoto laughs that it really brings back memories. Yuyu looks at Kyoto with warm, sparkling eyes and happily calls it the taste of memories. Kyoto smiles but tells her to put it back since nobody else is going to eat it, which Yuyu sheepishly accepts with a giggle. As they walk home carrying their grocery bags, Kara suddenly panics and screams that she forgot to buy a case for her color contacts. Kara slaps her forehead and laments that she will have to wear her contacts again tomorrow, so Yuyu and Utami offer to lend her some of their spare contacts if the prescriptions match. Kara looks confused and replies that there actually is no prescription for her contacts. A bewildered Kyoto asks what she means, and Kara explains that prescription does not matter for her contacts. Kara proudly boasts that she has perfect vision in both eyes, leaving a confused Kyoto to ask why she even wears contacts and tell her she can just take them out when she is done today. Kara screams in shock, arguing that taking them out would force her to show everyone her naked eyes, which she claims is as deeply embarrassing as being seen without any makeup on. She flusteringly covers her cheeks and yells that meeting up without colored contacts is out of the question, calling Kyoto a dummy. Tsureja looks completely bewildered and asks what she is talking about, while Utami sweat drops and admits that, for once, she actually agrees with him. Kara screams in outrage as Utami asks if she is stupid, while Kyoto privately reflects that Gyaru logic is impossible to comprehend, though he supposes that is exactly what makes a Gyaru who she is. Kara walks ahead, cheerfully leading Kyoto down the street. Kara asks Kyoto if there is a convenience store nearby, and Kyoto confirms that there is one close by. Kara decides to just go get the contact lens case herself, so she does not drag everyone else along, asking Kyoto to tell her where the store is. Kyoto points out that the store is actually quite hard to find, which surprises Kara, so he offers to show her the way. Kara clasps her hands and playfully thanks him, while Kyoto hands his house key to Kanagi and instructs her to lead everyone else back to the house. Kyoto and Kara wave goodbye as they split off, while Kanagi cheerfully waves back alongside Yuyu, Utami, Tsureja, and Yuko. The scene shifts to the exterior of the brightly lit convenience store. Inside the store, an excited Kara points at a rack of necties and wonders who buys them, to which Kyoto deadpans that they are probably for emergencies like weddings and funerals, before Kara suddenly spots salted rice balls and gasps in delight. Kara points at another shelf, giggling that it is incredibly funny, leaving a bewildered Kyoto to ask what she is looking at. Kara beams and holds up an adult magazine, prompting a flustered Kyoto to quickly tell her to put it back. Kara laughingly admits that she is getting a bit too hyped up, to which Kyoto dryly points out that she has been acting like that this entire time anyway. Kara flaps her arms excitedly and shouts that having a sleepover together is super fun, blabbing that she is so excited she could pee herself, which leaves a sweat-dropping Kyoto utterly speechless. When Kyoto asks what is wrong, Kara suddenly blushes and awkwardly realizes that saying she could pee herself from excitement might have been too much to say in front of a guy, laughing in sudden embarrassment. Kara frantically begs him to forget she said that, warning him that she will be furious if he ever brings it up, leaving a sweat-dropping Kyoto to reflect on how confusing yet adorable her boundaries are. Kara crouches down by the contact lens cases and apologizes for ruining his chance to be alone with Yuko, but she adds that Yuko seemed to have fun anyway, teasingly calling Kyoto a caring older brother. Kyoto quietly denies it, explaining that when it comes to Yuko, he feels guilty because he was the one who pushed him into changing his personality. Kara looks up at him thoughtfully and asks what exactly he said to Yuko. Kayota blushes and mumbles that he cannot say, because it is too embarrassing, prompting a whining Kara to beg him to tell her. Kayota sweatily admits to himself that he wants to go back in time and punch himself because of how incredibly intense and fired up he got in the counseling room, ignoring Kara as she continues to pester him. Kara smiles warmly and remarks that knowing Kayota, he probably pierced right through Yuko's heart, with his words causing an embarrassed Kayota to ask if she is making fun of him, which she softly denies. Inside the convenience store, Kara looks over at Kayota and admits that she is actually a little jealous of him catching him by surprise. When Kayota asks if she is serious, Kara confidently confirms it, explaining that Kayota is the kind of guy who can seamlessly adjust how he acts depending on the person he is talking to. Kara points out that with Yuyu, Kayota has a vibe of gently watching over her, and with Utami, he jokes around while quietly stepping in to support her whenever she is busy studying or trying to lead the group, while Kayota listens thoughtfully. She adds that with Yuko, he acts super careful but quietly gives him a little push forward when needed. And with Tsureja, he can come on strong because of the deep level of mutual trust Kara explains that she is the complete opposite, because she always says things straight to people's faces regardless of who they are, which is exactly why Utami snapped at her previously. Kara sighs and laments that even though she knows this about herself, she just cannot help it, asking Kayota if that makes her incredibly annoying. She softly confesses that lately she has gotten a little scared of accidentally stepping too far into other people's lives. Kara suddenly perks up with a bright smile, telling him to completely forget everything she just said, because she is getting too gloomy, which leaves a bewildered Kayota staring at her. Kara urges him to hurry up and head back, jokingly warning him that Tsureja is probably so hungry he will end up eating Yuko alive. Kayota silently watches Kara walk ahead of him, deeply processing her vulnerability and finding her even more endearing. Back at the house, Utami confidently reveals that she actually makes curry almost every single week, catching the group's attention. Kara enthusiastically names it Utamin curry, and Kanagi cheers that she wants some, prompting an embarrassed Utami to angrily tell them not to give her cooking weird names. Yuyu giggles at the new name, which only irritates Utami further, while Kayota smiles and formally declares Utami the head chef of the dinner. Tsureja laughs that Utami now has tons of titles, including sleepover committee, president, and head chef, prompting an outraged Utami to yell that she never wanted any of those titles. Utami crosses her arms and admits that she has never made curry for this many people, before prompting Kara to point out that they definitely need someone else to help her out in the kitchen. Kayota raises his hand and volunteers to help, which Kara agrees is a smart idea, since it is best to have someone who actually knows where everything is in the house. Kara playfully declares Kayota the sous chef, and Kayota smiles and says he is looking forward to working with her, leaving a flustered Utami to grumble at their teasing. Yuyu glares at them in complete silent jealousy, emitting a dark aura and muttering about them cooking together alone, while a sweat-dropping Kayota reflects on how deeply consumed by jealousy she is. Kara cheerfully raises her fist and announces that she will help out too, listing all the chores like cleaning the bath, cleaning the bedrooms, and preparing the beds that they need to finish. The group splits up to tackle the chores, with Kara scrubbing the bathtub, Tsureja carrying a massive pile of futons, with Yuko and Kanagi following behind him, and Yuyu vacuums the floor. In the kitchen, Kayota is amazed by how fast Utami chops the vegetables, while a smug Utami boasts that this is nothing. Kayota asks if she usually cooks, and Utami explains that because both of her parents work, she has been helping out in the kitchen since elementary school. Kayota remarks that he never thought they would make curry together at his house, and Utami admits that she is honestly surprised too. Utami adds that, beyond the curry and sleepover, she never imagined a day would come where she would study with other people. Kayota asks if they were a distraction during their study sessions, but Utami reassures him that the group sessions actually helped her maintain a better balance. Utami mentions her grades were better than expected, and that a weight has finally been lifted off her shoulders, prompting a curious Kyoto to ask what she means. As she continues chopping, Utami quietly confesses that she failed her entrance exams for her first-choice school. Kyoto stares at her in surprise as she calmly continues to chop the ingredients in silence. Utami explains that her real first choice was an all-girls school with much higher academic standards, leading Kyoto to note that her grades are indeed way above everyone else's. Utami stirs the pot and admits that thinking back on it now, she is actually glad that she failed those exams. She explains that if she had attended that all-girls school, she probably would have become even more stubborn and turned into a really boring person. When Utami remarks that her reasoning probably just sounds like sour grapes, Kyoto gently disagrees, stating that her perspective is actually really important. Kyoto folds his arms and teasingly concludes that she is basically glad Tsureja was around, prompting a thoroughly flustered Utami to blush and demand to know how he got to that conclusion. Still blushing, Utami pouts and quickly drops the subject, muttering to forget she said anything. The curry continues to simmer on the stove while the two of them quietly proceed with their preparations. Kyoto asks if mixing two different kinds of curry roux really makes it taste better, and Utami confirms that is how they always prepare it at her house. Tsureja and Kara burst back into the kitchen, with Kara cheering that the food smells incredible, and Tsureja loudly complaining that he is starving. They run past Kyoto and Utami, heading eagerly toward the table. Looking at the boiling curry, Kyoto comments that everyone has worked hard to get everything ready, while Utami mutters that they are noisy, and notes that all that is left is letting the food simmer. Utami says she wants to add butter at the very end to make the curry richer, and Kyoto agrees as she reaches over to open the refrigerator. Kyoto looks into the open refrigerator, while Utami stands beside him, asking if he knows where the butter is, and he mumbles that it should be in there somewhere. Utami spots the butter on the very top shelf of the refrigerator and complains about it being so high up, while Kyoto lets out a quiet acknowledgement. Utami stands on her tiptoes, groaning and straining with all her might as she desperately reaches for the top shelf. Kyoto offers to grab the butter for her, but a stubborn Utami immediately huffs that she can get it herself, trembling as she insists it is nothing, while Kyoto tells her not to push herself. Utami glares intensely at him and warns him not to underestimate her, asking if he is calling her a girl who cannot reach the top shelf or a high schooler who still fits into a fourth grader's clothes. Utami screams in frustration and desperately leaps up, barely managing to snag the edge of the butter box with her fingertips. Utami proudly boasts about her success, but the box suddenly slips from her grip and falls through the air, catching her completely by surprise. Kyoto calls out to ask if she is okay as she turns around in panic, but she loses her balance and collides heavily with him, making a loud thudding sound. As they wobble and fall, Utami gasps in surprise and lets out a small yelp. They land flat on the kitchen floor, with Utami faceplanting directly onto Kyoto's chest, as a thoroughly startled Kyoto groans in pain under her. Utami gasps as she realizes the close position they have landed in. Utami blushes furiously and scrambles backward, shouting a hasty apology, while Kyoto lies on the floor dazed. Kyoto smiles weakly and jokes that this time she was the one who pinned him down, prompting a startled blush from Utami as she remembers a previous incident. Utami blushes and mutters that it is true, before quickly grabbing the fallen butter off the floor and declaring that they need to finish the curry, ending the discussion. She quickly cuts a slice of butter with a knife and plops it directly into the simmering pot of curry. Still blushing brightly, Utami quietly stirs the pot of curry to melt the butter. Kyoto sits up on the kitchen floor and quietly watches her stir, caught off guard by her blushing face. Utami notices his gaze and stammers, asking if there is something on her face. Kyoto quickly smiles and denies it, standing up to help her finish. Kyoto gently asks her if she is hurt, and a blushing Utami softly reassures him that she is completely fine. Kyoto and Utami stand in the kitchen together in quiet harmony as they put the finishing touches on the meal. Yuyu suddenly steps into the kitchen looking unusually quiet, prompting Kyoto to ask her what is up. Yuyu stares intensely with completely blank, swirling eyes, and whispers that she swears she smelled rom-com vibes mixed in with the smell of curry. Yuyu demands to know if something happened between them, leaving a sweat-dropping Kyoto to silently question if romantic comedies can actually have a physical scent. The scene shifts to the group sitting around the table cheerfully devouring the food and calling it Utamin curry. Kara happily beams and yells that the dinner is so good, while Utami watches her with a quiet, embarrassed expression. Yuyu giggles that the curry is wonderful, and Kyoto notes that the richness of the butter really makes it stand out, prompting a blushing Utami to reluctantly agree they can just call it by that name. Utami mentions she made enough food for about 10 people, and asks if anyone wants seconds, prompting an excited Tsureja to raise his hand and yell for seconds, while Kara politely requests just a half portion. Kanagi also raises her hand and demands more food, which Utami tiredly agrees to serve, while Kyoto eats his portion in quiet observation. Kyoto notices Kara holding up her phone and asks if she is filming again, while Utami grumbles that she is making everyone uncomfortable. Kara points her camera at Utami and giggles that she is adorable, teasingly filming her eating her own namesake curry and calling it cannibalism, which makes a bright red Utami scream in outrage. Tsureja jokingly asks if they call it that, because Utami is actually one of the ingredients, which Kyoto deadpans is horrifying, prompting Utami to angrily snap that such a thing is obviously impossible. The scene shifts to the empty plates on the table, as everyone expresses their gratitude for the delicious meal. Utami suggests they quickly clean up the dishes so they can get back to watching the drama, while Tsureja clenches his fist and begs Yuko to continue training him, to which Yuko hesitantly agrees. The group splits up again, with Kara setting up the laptop, Tsureja and Yuko playing their game, and Yuyu laughing with Kanagi, while Kyoto watches them warmly. Tsureja looks at the wall clock and gasps in surprise at how late it has gotten, prompting Kyoto to suggest they start taking turns using the bathroom. Tsureja comments on how nice it is that his house has 2 bathrooms, and Kyoto explains that one of them is older and run down, since it was added later, proposing that the guys use that older one. Tsureja declares he is fine with either bathroom and asks for Yuko's agreement, using the nickname Macaron, prompting Yuko to blush and agree, while Kyoto deadpans that he needs to stop letting Tsureja call him that. Back with the girls, Kara suggests that to save water they should bathe in pairs, prompting an excited Kanagi to shout that she wants to bathe with Yuyu, to which Yuyu giggles and readily agrees. Kara declares that she will bathe with Utami, letting out a suspicious giggle that leaves a sweat-dropping Utami to ask what is with that laugh. Kyoto sweatily wonders to himself if the wholesomeness of their bathing arrangements is about to explode. Tsureja loudly suggests that the guys should bathe together too, but Kyoto immediately shuts him down due to Tsureja's large size, prompting a panicking Tsureja to ask if Kyoto and Yuko were planning to bathe alone instead, which flusters Yuko. An awkward silence falls over the 3 boys as Tsureja and Yuko stare at Kyoto. Yuko blushes and mutters an awkward sound, while Kyoto panics, internally realizing how bad the situation looks. Yuyu and Utami seethe with dark, jealous auras in the background, prompting a sweating Kyoto to quickly laugh it off and insist he was only kidding. Yuko nervously agrees that it is not cool to leave someone out, and Kyoto quickly decides that the guys will bathe one at a time, which Tsureja agrees with. Yuko announces that he will go first, and Kyoto agrees as Yuko heads off to the bath. The remaining group members gather around the table in Kyoto's room, quietly watching the mystery drama on the laptop. Kara looks confused and asks Utami who Rina is, and Utami admits she was wondering the exact same thing, since she feels like she has heard that name somewhere before. Tsureja casually chimes in that she was the killer's first victim back in episode 1, completely shocking Kyoto, Kara, and Utami. A bewildered Kara points out that Tsureja has been playing video games this entire time, and barely even watched the drama, making his detailed memory highly unexpected. Tsureja looks confused and replies that they can easily figure all of that out, just by listening to the dialogue, leaving Kyoto and Utami sweat-dropping in annoyance. Kara, Kyoto, and Utami all grumpily pout that Tsureju's crazy listening skill genuinely pisses them off, with Utami muttering she has never been more annoyed by him. As Tsureju defensively yells that he was only trying to help, Kyoto silently reflects on how one never knows where a person's hidden talent might lie before Tsureju notices they are out of barley tea, and Kyoto volunteers to grab a new pitcher. Kyoto walks down the hallway holding the empty pitcher, and the bathroom door suddenly slides open, catching his attention. Kannagi cheerfully steps out of the bathroom and calls out to him, prompting Kyoto to ask if she is already finished with her bath. Kannagi happily confirms she is already done, and Kyoto jokingly asks if she is still taking incredibly quick crow baths, causing Kannagi to mimic a crow with a bright smile. Kannagi loudly announces that she is going to eat ice cream, running down the hallway with light tapping footsteps as Kyoto watches her go. Kyoto turns his head toward the open bathroom door in sudden realization and calls out for his sister in confusion. Kyoto walks down the hallway holding the pitcher of tea, looking back at the bathroom door. Kyoto is completely shocked to see Yuyu inside the bathroom, while a startled, blushing Yuyu shrieks in surprise upon seeing him. A deeply embarrassed Kyoto yells an apology, realizing she was obviously still bathing, while Yuyu giggles nervously and says it is okay, prompting another stammered apology from Kyoto. Kyoto explains through the door that Kannagi always showers super fast, and Yuyu agrees she left in no time. Kyoto tells Yuyu to take her time since the others are still glued to the drama, and Yuyu agrees to stay in a bit longer. Yuyu splashes some water and softly asks if Kyoto is leaving, catching him off guard. Yuyu blushes and smiles sheepishly through the steam as Kyoto turns back to listen. Kyoto realizes that since Kannagi left her, Yuyu must feel lonely bathing by herself. Yuyu blushes and agrees that it is lonely, so Kyoto smiles and sits down on the floor outside the door, suggesting they talk here for a bit. Yuyu giggles happily, feeling comforted by his presence. Yuyu asks if he always uses this particular bathroom, and Kyoto explains that he does, noting that he only really used the older one when he was a kid. Yuyu giggles, thinking of him as a child, and Kyoto remembers that she was looking through his childhood photo albums with Kannagi earlier. Yuyu happily repeats that the little Kyoto was so cute, while Kyoto, blushing slightly, mutters that everyone is cute when they are little. Yuyu adds that his middle school self was cute too, prompting Kyoto to grumble that calling that version of him cute is basically just teasing him at this point. Yuyu giggles again, but then her tone turns soft and serious, telling Kyoto that he is truly amazing, which confuses him. Yuyu explains that she is amazed by how he successfully transformed himself from an introvert to an extrovert, prompting Kyoto to point out that she ended up looking like a stylish Gyaru herself. Yuyu points out that he completely stopped reading manga and watching anime to achieve his goal, admitting she could never do something that extreme. Kyoto crosses his arms and admits that he was simply desperate back then, and looking back, he probably did not need to go to such extremes, though Yuyu still insists that his determination was incredible. Yuyu confesses that she never realized he used to be an introvert, and always assumed he was a natural extrovert, so discovering the truth really surprised her, leaving Kyoto in silent reflection. Kyoto admits that he had been worried about it for a long time, because keeping his past a secret made him feel like he was lying to her, which surprises Yuyu. He explains that since she never doubted his outgoing persona, keeping his past hidden eventually made him feel like he was actively deceiving her. Kyoto looks down, admitting he felt kind of guilty, and apologizing for taking so long to reveal his past to Yuyu. Yuyu giggles softly behind the bathroom door, leaving a slightly awkward Kyoto waiting outside. Kyoto asks if his apology was weird, prompting a blushing Yuyu to quickly stammer that she did not mean it like that, while laughing softly. Kyoto asks what is so funny, and Yuyu giggles warmly as she speaks his name. Yuyu softly tells Kyoto that he is still cute, catching him completely off guard. Kyoto blushes furiously and shouts in absolute embarrassment at her compliment. Kyoto demands to know what she just said, But Yu only giggles, sheepishly prompting Kyoto to tell her to stop laughing as he reflects that he would have flicked her forehead if she was not completely naked. Yu gently explains that she never cared about his past, pointing out that he was the only one feeling guilty, and calling his worry kind of silly. Kyoto mutters that her calling his worry silly is a bit harsh, explaining he was genuinely worried about it, but he silently admits to himself that she is right. Yu says he worked incredibly hard to become an extrovert, so worrying over his past is just weird, prompting a thoughtful Kyoto to ask if she really thinks so. Kyoto admits that she is probably right, and Yu confidently agrees with him. Yu smiles warmly through the steam and adds that when he told her he used to be an introvert, it actually made her really happy. Kyoto asks why that made her happy, and Yu giggles softly, explaining that it is because they are the same. Kyoto smiles and agrees that they are the same, noting that they both worked incredibly hard, while Yu warmly giggles and agrees that they really did. Yu suddenly hesitates and quietly calls his name, prompting a concerned Kyoto to ask if something is wrong. Before Yu can finish her sentence, she suddenly lets out a terrified, high-pitched shriek, shocking Kyoto. Kyoto quickly stands up and demands to know what is wrong, and a panicked Yu screams that there is a huge bug in the bathroom. Kyoto deadpans that it is just a bug and tells her to splash it with hot water, but Yu desperately whimpers that she cannot do it, because she absolutely hates bugs. Yu lets out another loud scream as the sliding door suddenly creaks, prompting a panicked Kyoto to call her name as he slides the door open. Yu sits shivering in the bathtub, blushing and tearfully begging Kyoto to help her. Kyoto stands frozen at the open bathroom door, his face completely pale as he tries to process what is happening. Kyoto spots a tiny bug on the wall, completely dumbfounded by how small it is after hearing Yu's massive shriek. A shivering Yu softly thanks him from the tub, and a flustered Kyoto tells her to be careful as he prepares to deal with it. Kyoto quickly opens the window, lets the little bug flutter outside, and slides the bathroom door shut as he walks away. Kyoto looks deeply grateful, silently thanking the little bug for the unexpected romantic development, and reflecting that the world is overflowing with beautiful light. Utami suspiciously glares at Kyoto as she walks down the hallway, prompting a nervous Kyoto to ask what is up. Utami narrows her eyes and mutters that she is pretty sure she just caught a whiff of rom-com vibes nearby, silently concluding to herself that romantic comedies really do have a scent.